6 months. Good morning, everyone. Call this meeting to order. And, Commissioner Netherland, would you lead us in?
I would be honored.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do a roll call, Tammy.
Commissioner District 1, Randy Netherland.
I'm here.
Commissioner District 2, Pat Carswell.
Here.
Commissioner District 3, Sharon Trask.
Commissioner Trask is out. She had surgery recently, so she won't be joining us at this time, but she has an excused absence. With that, do we have any correspondence or organizational business?
We do. We received Washington State Department of Health sent an administrative order reclassifying a portion of Skookum Inlet Commercial Shellfish Grow Area in Mason County. Jeff Bickford applied for the Solid Waste Advisory Committee. Douglas Day sent a request to remove current use classification. Cassandra Jean Marie Ness applied for the Timberland Regional Library Board of Trustees. Washington State Liquor and Cannabis Board sent in a cannabis license application for Rockstar Farms LLC. The U.S. Department of Commerce Economic Development Administration sent in a letter regarding de-designation of Columbia Pacific Resource Conservation and Economic Development District. And Washington State Liquor and Cannabis Board sent in a special occasion liquor license application for the Washington Indian Gaming Association.
All right. There also has been a number of letters, I don't know what that, letters and emails from people on the main topic of today's public hearing, or at least probably the reason most of you are here. And that we will now enter into time for an open forum for citizens' input, and this is for anything that is not on the agenda. So if you want to talk about wake boats or anything else, now's not the time. We'll get to that in a few minutes, but if you have any other comments, are there any comments in the room on things that are not on the agenda? Seeing none in the room, are there any in Zoom space? Same rules, nothing that is on the agenda. All right. Seeing none, we will move forward with motion for adoption of the agenda.
Mr. Chair, I move for the adoption of today's agenda as presented.
I will second that. It has been moved and seconded for an adoption of the agenda as presented. And look for any discussion. Seeing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Motion carries. We'll be looking for a motion for approval of the minutes of May 11th, 2026 briefing minutes and May 12th, 2026 regular meeting minutes.
Mr. Chair, I move for approval of the May 11th, 2026 meeting minutes and the May 12th, 2026 regular meeting minutes as presented.
It has been, second. It has been moved and seconded that we will approve the minutes from May 11th, 2026 and May 12th, 2026. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of approving of the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say nay. Motion carries.
No, Marie and them went downstairs.
I'm sorry. Okay. Sorry.
Not you.
It'll happen.
It'll happen. So we will now read through the action agenda, and we'll read them all first, and if there's any items that anyone would like removed for discussion as a separate discussion and a separate vote, that can be done after we finish reading the minutes. Commissioner Netherland, if you would read items 8.1 through 8.3, I will read the remainders.
Happily, Commissioner. Item number 8.1 reads, approval of warrants and treasurer's electronic remittance. Claims clearing fund, warrants number 8120998 through 8121278. The amount, $2,043,684.33. The direct deposit fund, warrants number 125891 through 126303. The amount, $981,719.63. The salary clearing fund, warrants number 7009664 through 7009703. The amount, $1,295,811.93. Item number 8.2 reads, approval of Washington State Department of Commerce Consolidated Homeless Grant, the CHG. That's amendment for an additional funding in the amounts of $65,198 for the state fiscal year 2026 and $490,596 for the state fiscal year 2027. Item number 8.3 reads, approval of the letter of support for the Great Peninsula Conservancy's Washington Wildlife and Recreation Program, the WWRP, grant application for the Potlatch Tree Farm Protection Project.
Item 8.4, approval of the 2025 Oath of Inventory. Item 8.5, approval to set public hearing on Tuesday, June 23rd, 2026 at 9:15 a.m. to inform citizens of the availability of funds and eligible uses of the State Community Development Block Grant, CBBG, that's easy to say, and receive comments on proposed activities specifically funding the Community Action Council of Lewis, Mason, and Thurston counties, as well as receive comments on the 2025-2026 program. Item 8.6, approval to set public hearing for June 23rd, 2026 at 9:15 a.m. to consider and approve supplemental budget requests and budget transfers to the 2026 budget. Item 8.7, approval to award fundings of the .09 Rural County Sales and Use Tax Fund number 103 to the Port of Shelton in the amount of $350,000. Are there any items that you would like to remove for separate discussion? Are there any items that anyone in the audience would like to remove for further discussion? Seeing none. Are there any in the Zoom space that would like to have an item removed for further discussion? I'm assuming there's more on that list that I can't see, so. Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to approve the action agenda.
Mr. Chair, I move for approval of the action agenda in its entirety with the special comment, if seconded.
I second that motion. Comments?
Mr. Chair, I just want to, I was a little uncomfortable when it came to the 09 and putting it on there, but we have gone out to the public. We gave them ample opportunity to get some weight back into it. We've had response from PUD1, PUD3, as well as the city of Shelton, all in the affirmative. So with that, I will be approving it, even though it was questionable on it in the beginning.
The only other comment I would like to make is the Great Peninsula Conservancy Washington Wildlife and Recreation Program grant application. This is actually to preserve some forest land that a member of the community would like to keep as forest land going on in perpetuity. So forestry is pretty important to the area, and that's a good deal. So we're very happy to support that effort. With those comments being made, all in favor of adopting the action agenda as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say nay. Hearing none, the agenda is approved. Now, we'll move on to other business. Department heads or elected officials. Are there any department heads or elected officials in the audience that would like to address us?
Oh,
We have one in the Zoom space. Auditor Dunkel. You're muted.
I'm muted. I was trying to put the video on, but anyway, hey, good morning, Commissioner Tarsville. Good morning, everybody. I just want to let you guys know that with the pending retirement of our Assistant Elections Administrator, the Auditor's Office is declaring a surplus. We intend to come down in staffing by one full-time equivalent, one head. And that will be with the elimination of the licensing and recording manager position. And so with that formal declaration, I'm working with Kim in Human Resources to determine the specific next steps in accordance with the AFS CME contract. And I should have all those details ready to share with you in the briefing on Monday, June 1st, so stay tuned.
Thank you. Anyone else in the Zoom space have a comment? Seeing none, we will move into the public hearing. We have 3 items for public hearing today, and I will go ahead and open up the public hearing to consider the ordinance amending Mason County Code Chapter 6.64 Group B Water Systems Regulations. And a presentation from our staff. There he is, there's Ian. So we'll call this meeting to order. Excuse me.
How do we get recognized to speak?
On this particular one,
Yes, sir.
the staff will make their presentation, and then once he's done, we'll ask questions for clarification purposes,
I'm a reporter.
and then we will have public testimony.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Good morning, everyone. Today we have proposed changes to Mason County Group B water system regulations. These regulations affect Group B water systems and two-party water systems. So basically 2 to 9 connections are what we typically permit in Mason County. The bulk of the changes are geared toward updating the code and making it consistent with the state regulations. It's been a very long time since we've updated this. So we're mostly clarifying language, making it consistent with the state regulation. We have 2 notable changes. One is to require regular water quality monitoring for Group B systems. And also we are removing
The chief co-owns this home with somebody else that's an owner of that corporation. He's buying it from another party.
We are also proposing to remove the Water System Designer Certification Program, which has not been in use in the county for many years. That's all I've got for you.
What was the first part I didn't hear because of that?
We have a regular water quality monitoring requirement that we're putting in. The state used to have a regular water quality requirement in the WAC, and they pulled that out in 2016, so we're putting that back in, because public water systems should have regular monitoring and testing.
Do you have a specific, what do you mean by regular monitoring? How?
We have in the code, I can tell you exactly what it says, but I believe it's twice a year for bacteria and every 2 years for I'll just read it to you so I'm not guessing. Fecal coliform to be tested a minimum of twice a year, and then nitrate once every 2 years.
You made a statement that caught my attention, though. The state had pulled this out. Are you saying the state has not requested for it to go back in? That it's
state-
us on our own, or is this?
That's correct. The state got rid of the regular monitoring requirement for Group Bs. I believe it was in 2016 or somewhere.
Okay, now it's been presented. Are there any questions to staff regarding what the staff has presented? See none in the audience?
So, did you say that a two-person shared water system, so a private well serving like 2 properties, that has to be tested twice a year under this new?
No, this particular requirement applies to connections that are 3 or more. 2-party wells are a limited scope public water system, so those have less requirements.
Okay, so the new proposal is 3 and above?
Yes, as far as the testing goes.
3 to 9.
Yeah.
Okay,
3 to 9.
If you have more than 9, there are
it's
additional,
already, yeah.
there are additional requirements.
Also, Ian Tracy, Environmental Health Manager.
Thank you, Ian. Anybody in Zoom space? If you raise your hand, we'll call on you, or unmute yourself and state your name. All right. Seeing none, we will close that part of this hearing. So now we will open the public comment section. So this will be your opportunity to speak for or against. Please step up to the podium, state your name and where you're from.
May I approach the dais? Here's a copy of the report for the, so she doesn't have to sit there and take a lot of notes.
Thank you.
Good morning, commissioners, and everyone else in the room. Turn this over, we don't need that. My name is Robert A. Pastor, and I reside at 292 Vineyard Crest Road on Stretch Island. I've lived in Grapeview for 54 years. Each week, I review the county commissioner briefing and regular meeting bracket packets to better understand how county decisions affect our community and where our tax dollars are being spent. This particular topic raised significant concerns with me because I'm a Class B, according to your regulations. After reading the proposal, I had no idea that the well on the property was designated as a Class B water system. The proposed ordinance referenced WAC 246-291, which I read through and through many times. I got about 20 hours in this little report. I reviewed it in detail, and it only heightened my concerns. The Eagles Nest water system serves 3 contiguous residences on Stretch Island and is classified as a Class B system. It is identified as Department of Ecology well number ACK 472. The well is 319 feet deep, and WAC 246 defines it as a Class B system. I began looking further into the numbers. Mason County, including the city of Shelton, contains approximately, not approximately, I did from the assessor, 51,053 assessor parcel numbers. Of that number, there are 542 Class Bs. Thank you, Mr. Tracy, wherever you're sitting here. That's roughly 1%. Stretch Island contains, hello, gonna dance? Stretch Island contains approximately 190 assessor parcel numbers, 7 of which are classified as Class B. Regarding Eagles Nest water suit usage, We installed a kilowatt hour meter, or I did anyway, to measure electrical consumption because the pump is powered through my PUD account. Current PUD cost is approximately 0.895 cents per kilowatt hour, roughly equivalent to operating a 10-watt LED bulb for 4 days. The monthly operating cost on the system has been extremely low. Listen to this, because we keep track of every month. January 2023, 44 cents. January 2024, 50 cents. January 25, 81 cents. January 26, 86 cents, after the PUD increase. The well serves 4 residences, 2 of whom reside part-time in Oregon and me in California for approximately half the year. I have concerns regarding the proposed ordinance revisions. First, the proposed ordinance, Class B, from the definition section, that removes Class B from the definition section. This caused me to revisit 246-291, where the definition remains clearly established and should be included. So it defines what this gentleman is looking for. What is a Class B? Okay, should be there. Second, the proposed ordinance removes purveyor from the definition section, despite the term appearing 6 separate times throughout the proposed update. WAC 246-291-010 contains the proper definition and should remain included for clarity and consistency. Additionally, there appears to be little focus on short-term rentals, whether associated with Class B systems or not. In my opinion, a short-term rental should require annual water testing because even upgraded to a Class A system, since it is a commercial operation, if you think about it. The existing on-site septic system ordinance is already compromised by linking bedroom allowances to septic tank, while many STRs exceed their intended occupancy levels and use levels for water. There is also no requirement for water testing during property title transfer. There is for on-site septic systems. The proposed Mason County section 6.64-050 applicability, this is important, should serve as the lead section of this proposed ordinance. 6.64-010, which is the applicability, I should say authority, is nice, but the applicability is all the way at the end. Applicability should be right up front. In federal regulations, at least aviation regulations, the first regulation is always the applicability. Who's it apply to? Okay. I have a question for Mr. Tracy. The suggested applicability section states, and I'm going to quote now, this chapter applies to new and expanding Group B water systems and two-party water systems. Mr. Tracy, Eagles Nest was designed, permitted, and approved in 2001. Does this new language absolve Eagles Nest from the proposed regulation, yes or no?
Yes,
It does, so we don't have to worry about it.
it would not affect you.
Why don't you say that? I don't want to have to come down here and... I'm not finished. I got one more page. It's not very much, but it's important to me because I have my good friend Art Whitson here, who's the Port of Grayfield Commissioner. And you probably know, I know that Randy knows I do a lot of work for the port. Okay? We got that boat ramp done for $2 million from the state, and I'm going after more. I have no authority at the port, so don't look at me and say, hey, just Port of Grayfield. I have no authority. I've been doing it for 14 years. Trust me, I know the rules. Another concern, and most importantly, is the apparent lack of citizen participation in the development of this ordinance. Public involvement is essential in matters affecting county residents. As stated in the Municipal Research and Services Center regarding citizen participation in government, I'll read it in a second for you people in the audience. It's a government organization that advises these people on what their job is. It says, volunteer citizen advisory boards are an integral part of American local government. The creation of advisory boards is a way for local governments to engage citizens in the democratic process. Currently, Resolution 2021-052 establishes the Mason County Clean Water District Advisory Committee, which is primarily focused on saltwater protection. Art is on that committee. I believe a new resolution should be adopted to replace and expand the committee into the Mason County Citizens Environmental Health Advisory Committee. This broader committee would address land, water, and air issues affecting Mason County residents. I thank you for allow me to make my presentation today. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
So, just so I get it in a nutshell, one of the things you're hoping to see is a reintroduction of the term Class B into it and the reintroduction of purveyor into it.
Yes, and move the applicability up to the top.
And, hold on one second.
And the addition of, or the changing of short-term rentals to class.
Yeah, I
A.
just bring it up because, there's a lot of them out that way by the marina. And, are there a commercial operation, do they require a license?
Yeah, no, that's something we're all still working on.
Okay, good. Well, they add this to it, how's
Yeah,
that?
and I'm not sure, just so you know, I'm not sure that this is even the form for that.
Yeah, well, exactly, yeah, I
That'd be
understand that. I just-
A different concept, but there was one other thing that, and I'm not sure this is the form and place that we do further discussion. I've had a real estate license for 20-some odd years, and we do test septics. Do we not test water? I know that I always have water tested when I was selling properties. Is that not in code though?
It always happens, but it's not a code.
But it's not in code, okay?
No, we test for septic only,
Okay, thank you.
doing title transfer. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Any other public comment on this issue?
Oh, sorry about that.
Seeing none, any in the Zoom space that would like to testify on this issue?
I'm glad I got first thing.
Don't see any hands being raised, so with that, we will now close the public testimony. Now, looking for a motion on this
Yes,
one.
if I can, I'd like to ask a question first. Ian, would you mind coming up for 1 moment, please? Is there a purpose or a reason why we removed the Class B?
Yeah, we removed both those regulations because they are in the Group B regulation, and we try not to duplicate definitions in two places because it creates confusion. If the state updates their code, then we have to then change our code to match their code every time they do a change. And if we put our definition in slightly different from theirs, then we have a question of, which definition is the right definition. So that was the reason.
So you're using the state's definition in your paperwork in comparison?
Yeah, because in this code, we adopt the state WAC.
Can I ask a question? Is that possible?
Typically, we're in the commissioner discussion, but I'm gonna go ahead and allow
Thank
it.
you, sir, I appreciate it, Mr. Carlo. Mr. Fleming, I'm sorry, I really apologize for being Fleming, so it's not ordinary. Mr. Tracy, no one reads the WAC, okay? You read the WAC because you have to. I read the WAC because I had to, because I thought it was Class B and had to comply with these regulations. If you ask for a raise of hands, how many people in this room, except for county employees, who's read the WAC, there's not going to be very many people. I'm of the opinion it should be in there. Would save me a lot of time. I got 20 hours on this thing.
What do you think of, just to ask you straight out, I always like more information, but I can understand one of the things that I've learned in all these years, you start putting two things different, you get lawsuits for two things different. So with me, I'm hesitant, but I'm leaning on my staff to tell me whether they think that, because I always want to try and find a way to make that nexus between our citizens and ourselves. Do you see an issue if we were to replace at least the mention of Class B back in it, or, and the terminology or the new definition within the state guidelines of what a purveyor is?
It's a really complex, if you look at the definition, it's its own code section. It's multiple paragraphs, because it's always like, if this, then that, if there's these many people in, then it's this. We can put it in there. Like I said, my opinion was to remove it because of the potential conflict of having the definition twice. But
Can you
that being
not
said,
use-
we can
Yeah,
do
Can you not
whatever
use the
you want.
same definition twice?
You can have the same
Copy and paste
definition. You can definitely do that. Like I said, then the state changes it, then we'd have to change it. It's just a workload thing. I don't have any personal opinion on it. We made that decision for the reasons that I stated. But if you
Gotcha.
want it in there, then we can put it back in there.
Thank you.
And one of the reasons to not include it and just reference to those things that's one of the reasons people don't read them, because they become so full of legalese and what the state has to put in these things. It becomes, nobody's gonna read it. So we wanna keep it as clear and concise as possible without overcomplicating it, because we'll have less people reading it. And that's another reason for that.
So, thank you, Dean. So in discussion with ourselves, how do you feel about that? Because I can see how we could easily, yes, it's a workload issue. If the state does change it, we change ours. But that's what we're supposed to do when things change anyway. I myself would be amicable with the idea of replacing the back off by copy and paste with what the state has, and having that added back in there. How do you feel about that?
I have no real objection to it, other than adding work to our staff is something I really don't want to do, but cutting and pasting is pretty easy to do these days. But and as we approach more AI, those are things probably can be done completely automated. A program could be set up to monitor those changes.
Because I can see it with, if you're okay with it, I'd be willing to make a motion for the passage of the approval of the ordinance amended Mason County Code, Chapter 6.64, under Group B Water System Regulations, with the inclusion of a copy and paste definitions of Class B and purveyor being placed in.
So is that a motion?
That's a motion, yes, sir.
Okay, then I will go ahead and second that motion. It has been moved and seconded. Now, you want to read that motion again?
Yes, I will, yes.
I didn't memorize it.
That's all right. Approval of ordinance amending Mason County Code, Chapter 6.64, under Group B Water System Regulations, to also include reintroduction of the state's definition for Class B and purveyor as a copy and paste.
It's been moved and seconded to make adjustments to our code as stated by Commissioner Nettleton. And any more discussion?
Just maybe a comment, if we could bring forward in the future at a briefing, the idea of introduction of requirement to have water tested when homes are sold. Not saying we do it, but it'd be a good time to have that conversation. And I'm gonna hold off on the other issue on the short-term rentals, because we're waiting for that to all come together through a planning commission. And at that time, we'll try to adjust that.
All right. It's been moved and seconded on this motion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed say nay. Motion carries. So we are closing that hearing. And we will move on to the second item for public hearing. We're going to open the hearing to consider the ordinance amending Mason County Chapter 9.48 Outdoor Burning Program. And Randy Collins.
Let's see him.
Good morning, Good morning, Commissioners,
name.
members of the general
public. Yeah, that was pretty smooth. You weren't there a minute ago.
We try to be subtle as possible.
Good job.
In 1995, Mason County adopted a series of burn regulations that were codified into Chapter 9.48 of the Mason County Code. Given the numerous changes that have occurred to burn regulations over the past 31 years, it has become necessary to update this chapter to make it consistent with state laws. To that end, the enclosed draft ordinance has been developed in concert with ORCA, which I would describe as a cleanup ordinance with the following changes. Making it consistent with the MOU executed with ORCA in 2008, authorizing the county to issue land clearing burn permits. Adding definitions section to provide a reference to answer the most frequently asked questions we receive by the general public regarding burn regulations. And lastly, enhancing accountability of those who conduct land burning by requiring them to meet the inspector on site to review the burn regulations and sign the permit in their presence, as well as give the county the ability to revoke their permit or suspend burning privileges as alternative enforcement actions for violations. So we did have 2 public notices that went out for this to notify the general public. We also ran an article in the Mason County Journal last week to conduct public outreach. And so I would ask you to go ahead and open the public hearing.
All right. The hearing is now open. Do we have any questions in the audience for staff on this issue?
Yes, I do, because I read this stuff every week, okay? Well, what was the thing about public participation, sir? I take it you're the fire marshal.
I am.
Okay, that was just a guess, but good one.
Good guess.
Okay. When you have a burn ban, could you give us a little notice, like, not put it in the Shelton Mason Journal, I don't know if people subscribe to it, but let us know somehow that in a week, we're gonna have a burn ban, or else our stuff piles up and becomes a fire hazard, as a matter of fact. In California, my ranch down there, you couldn't do that, okay? Fire marshal will be hung up, okay, literally. So a little notice, 2 weeks, month, whatever.
So what we do is, by the way, what you're describing is something that's separate from this. The county did adopt a policy in 2022 that addresses the policy for implementing burn restrictions.
Right.
And what we do is we work in concert with DNR because half of the lands in this county are regulated by DNR. So it only makes sense to have something that's consistent throughout the county. What we do is we follow the National Fire Danger Rating System.
Right.
And when the fire danger ratings go up, then we implement various restrictions. Usually the first things that happen is land clearing burning, and residential burning is restricted and recreational is still allowed. Then we go up to the next level, which would be high, where all burning, including recreation. And what I do is I talk to, about this time of year, I start talking to DNR, because they're the ones who have the scientists who are following that and establishing that rating. And as soon as I get the word, I share that on our Facebook page, I share that on our website, and of course we get PSAs out to KMAS, and as well as articles in the paper. So we do everything we can. A lot of it is just sometimes weather conditions change rather quickly, which obviously speeds that or expedites that process up. So, but we do our best. So, because I do understand your concern, and I've spent a lot of time in California fighting fires, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
There's just a law down there. So.
Yeah.
Any other comments?
What is the current status of the burn bans?
We're still low, so there is no restrictions in place. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for that question.
I've been dealing with burn bans for a long time. It seems like it happens around the same time every year,
It generally does.
roughly. So I think we all know to expect it's coming.
Yes, that I can guarantee you.
Hi, my name is Monty Ritter, and for years I've had a problem with illegal burning with my neighbors. I live in the county, I don't live in the city, but I'm on the city limit. One side of my property is on the city limits. My neighbors have always said that because they're in the county, they were able to adhere to these restrictions as I read in the journal last week. But what I've had is a problem with people burning household garbage and all this stuff in the middle of the night. And I've often called the fire department several times a day because my neighbors illegally burn.
Do you have specific questions for the staff?
Specific
Because
questions.
there will be time for you to make a.
Well, you'll get a chance
You'll get
to
a
speak.
chance to do your,
Okay, all right.
your testimony.
Well, my
This is for
question is,
questions.
I would like to know why we don't have the urban growth area part of the county defined as distinguished differently than the county's restrictions. So even though I'm in the county, I'm not in the city, my neighbors said that we're in the county and they can use these restrictions that are posted in the journal. But I'm in the urban growth area and we are required to adhere to a different standard. And I think that it should be distinguished.
Mark, is there a question there, or are you getting back
Well,
into your testimony?
why do we not have that? Why is that not included in your update?
Okay, so there are different regulations that apply to areas that are identified as urban growth areas and areas that are not. Those decisions are made at the state level, so I have absolutely no control over it. All I can do is follow the state law in terms of basically the only type of burning you can do in an urban growth area, which does not coincide with any city boundaries, is recreational burning, period. That's state law.
it still leaves me and my neighbors to.
Monty, we'll get back to it.
Okay,
We'll get
I'm
back.
sorry.
You'll have an opportunity to
I
give your
understand.
testimony.
I apologize.
No problem. Anybody else have any questions for staff? Seeing none, is there anybody in the Zoom room? So if you could raise your hand or take yourself off mute and say your name, feel free to do so now. Anybody in the Zoom room? Seeing none, we will now switch over from asking questions of the staff to open up public comment. Now, Monty, you can get up and
Well,
go.
that's pretty much my question is, I've had a hard time.
Monty, if you could step up to the podium.
Sorry.
There's a microphone there for you.
I appreciate that. You guys, and so many times I've been in front of this board, you'd think I'd know this, but it's new every time. So I've had a hard time with my neighbors, and I went to Commissioner Netherland, and he suggested I go to ORCA, the Olympic Regional Clean Air Agency, and Marshall Collins just mentioned them several times in what he's working with. They mentioned that there is a difference between urban growth areas, which are outside the city limits, but are inside the county, and the county requirements for people who are outside urban growth areas. And I think that my neighbors, as soon as they realize that there's an RCW code 70-94-743, this ordinance restricts burning in urban growth areas to a different level than in the county. And I think that should be included in what Marshall is putting together here, so that when neighbors who are in urban growth area, which have a higher density, and with neighbors living closer together, this stuff, what could work outside in the county with neighbors who don't live right next to each other, does not apply in urban growth areas. And so is there some way you could include this, distinguish the difference in this? Or how would we, because once Randy got these signs from ORCA and gave me a couple of them, I posted them up there in my house. It had to be on my private property. But after I did that and told my neighbors that the ORCA can come out and give them a penalty, they can confine them for violating this ordinance, they stopped. And I have not, I've gone from calling the fire marshal, a couple times a day at some points, to not having called them ever since I got these signs several years ago. And this sign has paid for itself. Okay, so I really appreciate Commissioner Netherland, Commissioner Trask. This is before Commissioner Carswell joined us, but I do think that the fire marshal should look at this as being included, because it's a powerful tool. Thank you.
Perhaps I could respond to that?
Yes.
So one of the, it sounds like your chief complaint, and correct me if I'm wrong, is your neighbor burning trash. Is that an affirmative?
That's.
Okay, so just to let you know, that has been such a widespread problem in the county. I've actually developed a policy in concert with environmental health, because they enforce the solid waste regulations in the county, which includes the burning of trash. So if the fire department gets a nuisance call for someone, say your neighbor burning trash, and they go out, what the fire department can do then is, as long as it's documented in their incident report, that incident report has the same power as an affidavit. That incident report can be forwarded to the environmental health department, and the environmental health department can then go out and cite them for violations of the solid waste regs. So there's an additional enforcement mechanism specifically to deal with your situation. I remind the fire chiefs of that probably every month when I meet with them, and encourage their staff to use that to try and, one, obviously curtail such a nasty practice, but also hopefully minimize the nuisance calls they're going out on. So when they're at a call and they get a more serious one, they're not delayed because of that. So I hope that addresses some of your concerns.
The other problem I have though is my neighbors, because we're in the county and not in the city, they would burn leaves, they burn, grass, they do outdoor burning, which creates a lot of smoke, and in our little cul-de-sac, it really makes it unbreathable. So it's, yes, they would slip in their household garbage while they are burning, but they are also using your ordinance for the major part of the county as being allowable outdoor burning of yard debris, branches and brush and shrubs and whatnot. That creates a lot of smoke. And in urban growth areas, under this ordinance here, that kind of burning is not allowed. And the size of the fire is also different. I'm not trying to get into people from enjoying a nice, recreational fire, but having a lot of neighbors in a congested area all burning yard waste at the same time is just as unbreathable as burning garbage. And yes, they do slip in the trash when they're burning, but so we should have it distinguished differently in urban growth areas.
So, Monty, if you don't mind, the chair recognizing for this. I understand what you're saying, but I think that's a discussion that we will have at a future date where we'll bring it forward as an item to be discussed. We definitely don't debate back and forth here. That's not what this is. This is for you to give testimony to us about the issues. On this one here, this is not something that's before us, but it sounds like a good thing for us to have a discussion on and see if we can have it on an agenda at one of our briefings in the future. I'm sure our fire marshal would be willing to come and speak with us on that. Thank you.
Any other public testimony on this issue? Anybody in the Zoom space want to give public testimony? I'll give you a moment. If you unmute yourselves or raise your hand. Seeing none, I will close the public testimony. Working on this, the gavel stuff. I'll turn that around. All right. Now we will move into commissioner discussion.
So, some of this stuff to folks would seem like it's a nothing burger and why would you do it? One of the things we learn as being commissioners is people want enforcement of things, but one of the first things you run into when it comes to enforcement of anything is clarity. If it's not a clear thing back and forth, it's really hard to enforce. And with that, I want to thank the fire marshal for doing what it takes. So one of the things that was brought up was Orca. I happen to be on that board for Orca. That's why I was able to help him there. But this is something we have a problem with all over the state. You have laws, but it's not clear. You're making an attempt to clear it up so that we can enforce them a lot easier. It's not that he's just making up a bunch of stuff. He's doing what it takes to allow us to make things better around here. So with that, I will be supportive of it, make a motion when you ask.
Yeah, my comment on this is very similar. So much of what we do is to try and keep up with what the state demands the county must do. The county in this state is very much an agent of the state. State tells us what we are allowed to do and what we're not allowed to do. So we have to try and keep up with whatever the state is changing or keeping our regulations up to date with those sorts of things. So this is an example of that sort of effort as the previous one was. So with that, I'll ask for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move for approval of the ordinance amending Mason County Code, Chapter 9.48, under Outdoor Burning Program, as presented.
It has been moved and seconded to approve Mason County Code, Chapter 9.48, as amended. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we will now take a vote. All those in favor of approving the ordinance, Chapter 9.48, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say nay. Hearing none, the motion carries. With that, I will close that hearing, and we will move on to the next. So, I will be opening the public hearing to consider an ordinance on wake enhanced motorboats. Travis Adams will be presenting.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Travis Adams. I'm the Mason County Administrator. So this is a public hearing to discuss the change of a county ordinance to limit the use of wake enhancement features on similarly equipped boats within Mason County based on a restriction from shoreline and depth of the lake. The restriction would require that you could not operate wake enhanced features on boats if you do not be a minimum of 250 feet from shore, or the boat has a continuous depth of 20 feet in the path of the boat. Commissioner Tarswell asked that I give a little explanation of how this topic came about and kind of the purpose of this meeting. The commission has received many complaints from property owners about damage being done to their property, specifically attributed to wake boats. They asked Commissioner Tarswell to go out and look at some of the property. That is what he did. He came back, and with the rest of the commission, they asked staff, primarily me, to do some research and put together a tentative proposal that would start public discussion on potential limitations on the use of those boats. I did quite a bit of research. There's a lot of studies that are behind pay firewalls. There is a significant amount of information out there in the public sphere. Of the studies that I looked at, probably of the studies that say that wake boats cause damage, the minimum distance that they recommended was 250 feet from shore. However, I would say that probably the average was about 500 feet from shore. Also, I would say that the minimum depth that would cause damage to a lake bed, if the studies are to be believed, was 20 feet was definitely the minimum that was listed in some studies, but it was generally 30 feet depth or more. So again, I put in the ordinance the least restrictive potential restrictions for public consideration and put that into a tentative ordinance. At that point, we solicited for public comment. We have received a lot of public comment on this, lots of emails, lots of phone calls, lots of letters in. And I will say a significant amount of the correspondence that we received specifically said that they didn't feel that we were going far enough, that they felt that we should specifically ban wake boats in their entirety within Mason County, not just the wake enhancement features on certain lakes. We also received a lot of correspondence on the other side saying that they didn't feel that we should limit the use of wake boats beyond what we do for normal motor boats within Mason County. And we had a whole lot of proposals for alternate ideas of what would be a reasonable compromise between the two communities, if you will. Some of them had further setbacks, some of them had different depth suggestions and things along those lines. So I put together a proposal. The commission reviewed that proposal. It's considered to be tentative with the hope that we'll get lots of public testimony and feedback so that the commissioners can fully consider what action they want to take, if any.
Thank you. Any questions in the audience specifically for staff on this? Yes,
Yeah, I would like to know, like you say, that you put it out to the public. I feel like I wanna know how that was put out to the public and in what form. Is it something to where everybody gets an opportunity to receive this information? Because I've got blindsided by this, and it was like last minute put something together, try to contest this. I'm a property owner on Lost Lake, lakefront property owner, and just I feel like just by word of mouth of people who, by hearsay, that's how it got to me. And that's one of the reasons I strongly I'm upset about it, because like you say, my question is to you, how has that been put out to the public?
Yeah, so the county has a procedure by which we notify, that we post all upcoming public meetings that we're going to have. It was also in the newspaper. We've had briefings on it, so anybody who watches the county briefings would know that it was coming up.
Oh,
So-
newspapers, so county briefings, so basically anybody under 45 is not gonna know about that, right? We put it in the paper. Yeah, sorry, you're just gonna miss out. I think that's really not fair.
So, try and keep it to, you'll have an opportunity to speak
And I will.
specifically, but if you
that
have
is
questions.
just- To have such a significant proposal, it was not adequate.
Any other questions?
I have a question. So, putting it together, my question is, are any, you including, since you put it together, or the commissioners, do you live on one of these lakes and have you had damage at your house and that might have been more of a motivation to prevent the wake boats? I'll refrain it.
no.
Do you live on the lake?
It was commission,
Yeah.
you mind if I jump in?
No.
Yeah, sorry.
He was asked to do this, to look into it by complaints we got from citizens.
But honestly, Commissioners, I have no problem answering that. Yes, I do live on a lake. However, I'm not a voting member of the commission, and I have no particular
You
bent
live
one
on
way or
a
the other.
lake, you live on a lake, but you say you have
Sir,
no.
this isn't an opportunity to go after the
Okay.
staff, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
If this ordinance passes, when would it go into effect?
That's a question for the legal people. I don't actually know the answer to that.
As soon as they pass, or if they pass it, that immediately goes into effect. Or they can set a timeframe.
Yes, ma'am. Sorry, her hand first.
All right, I have a question. Is any of the studies done in Washington State?
I did not find one from Washington State. However, I will fully admit that there's a ton of data out there that's behind pay firewalls that I don't have access to. And a lot of the data out there is very conflicting. And I would also add that there's a couple of websites that give you information on lake bathymetric data and depth data and those types of things, and it could be easily viewed depending on when you looked at that data that the lakes might be. Some of the lakes in Mason County might actually allow for wake boat operation during some times of the year, but not others, depending on the rise and fall of the depth of the lake and some of those nuances. And so I'm not professing that this is a perfect number with 20 feet or that 30 feet would be a perfect number, simply that based on the data that I had and some sort of middle ground in order to anchor the conversation, that's where I put the numbers. But again, there's a lot of discussion that can be had about those numbers.
Yes, sir.
I guess I heard what you just said, but I guess I'm still confused as to where you were getting the numbers that you cited for the minimum 250 and the minimum 20 feet, because I've seen studies that suggest lower numbers, far lower numbers. But you seem to indicate, if I heard you right, that you never even saw those, and I did not look behind any paywalls either. So I know there are other studies out there. How much time did you put into this research that is apparently the basis, even though it's not in any of the paperwork we got for this meeting, for your suggested ordinance numbers?
Yeah, so there's a lot of AI information out there that you can look up. I used that to do a little bit of the initial research. However, anything that I came across that gave me a number, I actually went out to try to find the actual study itself. And I only considered what I could actually find studies for. So there were studies from Minnesota and a limited number of other ones that were publicly available. And so I'm not saying that there were none that said less than 250 feet. I'm just saying of the general number of them out there, 250 seemed to be a kind of consensus minimum distance.
All right, go ahead.
Hey, I just, real quick, just honestly, I'll be transparent, I usually have one of these boats, that are in question. And my question to you is, who's gonna reimburse me if I specifically purchased property on the lake to enjoy recreational boating, you know, things behind a boat, towables, mainly wakeboard boat, it's what brought me to the Lost Lake. And who's gonna reimburse me for when my property values go down, or when I don't get the very reason that brought me to the lake is no longer allowed due to an ordinance?
I don't think that's an appropriate question for staff, so.
Well, it's a question nonetheless, so.
It may be, but this should be a question for staff, and I don't think that's an appropriate question for
Okay.
staff to answer. Yes, ma'am.
Are there other public lakes in Washington that have adopted ordinances like this?
Yes, I mean, there are different boating rules and regulations in different counties all across the state. They've got varying different rules. A lot of them will use speed as a factor. A lot of them will list specific sections of specific lakes that they have certain criteria for. It's kind of all across the board on how they decide to make those decisions.
So 3 questions. Was there any economic analysis of the benefits versus the costs of wakeboards on a lake? For example, the recreational benefit and the economic benefit of millions of dollars of boats and millions of dollars of fuel and hundreds of thousands of hours a year of recreation, and what that's worth. I also would like to know, when you're considering rules that limit the utility, basically raise the utility for many people and many millions of dollars of wake boats, you're saying the paywall stopped you? That actually, I wasn't even frosted out there till I heard that. You wouldn't go past a paywall when you're threatening millions of dollars of value in recreation. Millions. I'm kind of so pissed about that, I can't remember the third thing was, so I'll leave it. I mean, really, paywalls are a burden over millions?
Sir. Go ahead.
Well, he didn't answer it though.
Oh, what was the question specifically?
Why did, you proposed a rule,
The question he asked was, did you consider economic impact?
and why did you let paywalls stop you when you're making a decision that affects millions of dollars of equipment? Millions.
Yeah, I don't have any idea how many wake boats there are in Mason County. I don't know if there's 2 or 200.
Well, 5 would be about $1 million
no idea.
right now, so you know there's more than 5.
Okay, but I don't know the answer to that question.
I live on Island Lake, and I've done a lot of research on this. I'm a research biologist, and I have a lab on the lake. I study the lake, and I'm concerned about the animosity that's been generated by this. You guys are in a no-win situation. You're gonna get killed either way. But my concern as a biologist is that the data is pretty clear. I wondered if you had looked at the problems that Big Lake is having right now up in Skagit County.
No, I don't know anything about
You've
that.
got to look at what they're running up against. And it's all in the booklet that I gave to you folks. But that is a case study that really needs to be addressed, because they're talking about the loss of use of the lake. So if you've got any kind of a boat, you may not even be able to go on the water because of the algae blooms that have been generated by wakeboards. I'm not gonna make a statement of I'm for or against. I want to present
So
the
try
data.
and make it a question, because.
So, yeah, I would ask you to take a look at Big Lake.
Yeah, I will say that, while it was hard to find a lot of truly academic studies out there, it was not hard to find hundreds, if not thousands, of articles and anecdotal stories out there. And so there was a lot of time spent trying to sift through that and get to some real hard data. And I will fully admit I'm one guy and did not get to it all, that is for sure.
I would invite you to take a look at the.
I will do that. Yeah, and every email and correspondence that was sent into the county that I had access to, I did read. So.
In your research, have any specific studies been done on any Shelton Basin County lakes?
Negative. Not that I'm aware.
Man.
If we're gonna make this kind of ordinance Why haven't they been done? I can't hear.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear
We're
you.
gonna make this kind of ordinance that's very, controlling. Why haven't there been studies in our, I mean, we have lots of lakes. That would be fair.
Well, I think those are great questions to ask to the commission. My role and responsibility for the county is to put together the data and the information that the commissioners request in order to present that to the public. This is part of that process where we have a public meeting and the public is allowed to come in and address the commission and talk about what they found and what they feel is a reasonable compromise, or if they don't feel compromise is appropriate at all. So, mine is not, my role is not to, engage in creating studies in Mason County. I don't have that, so.
So you had to find information from other places.
Yes, I tried to find the best information that I had available and present it to the commission for their consideration. And he's gonna go over there.
Yes, hi, I live on Spencer Road, and I was reading over this ordinance, and one thing that jumped out at me is it said a motorized watercraft that is designed or operated to intentionally create an enhanced weight, including but not limited to vessels equipped with. So that seems kind of like a big wide definition. So could that include just ski boats that people have and they tow their grandkids around on inner tubes and things like that?
That is not the intent, no.
How could that, how is that excluded from that?
Because, well, I mean, that's a good point. I appreciate your reading of that. And a lot of times when you read things over and over again, sometimes it says what you want it to say. So if there was a modification to be made that seemed reasonable and the commission thought that was a good idea, that's totally fine. I can just simply say that it is not the intent at all to limit anything other than wake enhanced features on boats, not even the wake boats themselves.
Or maybe that could be a little more clearly defined or specifically defined. And then I had one more question. How do we know what lakes would be included in this? Would there be any lakes that people that have the bladder boats or whatever could do that?
Yeah, the enforcement mechanism of that would be through the sheriff's office, and they would be the ones who would do the review of lake depth, bathymetric data, all of those things in order to determine.
I'm gonna go to the back corner because he hasn't had a chance yet.
Enforcement is up to the sheriff's department. Sheriff's department is understaffed. They don't come out to our lake ever. How in the world do you expect an underfunded program to monitor something that's gonna get tons of calls?
Yeah, and that's a fantastic question, and I will say that anybody who knows my history knows I worked for the sheriff's office for 30 years. I was in charge of the marine enforcement program and was a marine enforcement deputy for years. I know exactly that is 100% true. The reality is we would pull up to a boat launch, and the minute we pulled up to the boat launch, every boat on the lake would suddenly have a dock. And they would have a dock until the sheriff's office boat pulled away, and that's just the way that it works. So the only true enforcement mechanism that worked during my time at the sheriff's office was when we just went to the house and stood on shore, watched the activity, and then took enforcement action from there. But again, deputies are few and far between. The ones that are trained to do marine enforcement are even fewer, and that is a very real aspect of this conversation, for sure. She's been waiting, so.
Don't you know, I understand the problem with enforcement. I live on Mason Lake. Okay, there is no enforcement. There are not enough sheriffs. The only way I can see of enforcement is gonna be neighbor against neighbor. Is that what are you going to be taking complaints by neighbors against neighbors? That's not gonna help the situation.
Well, yes, neighbors can call in complaints about what's going on in the activity. However, this type of violation requires an on-view observation from law enforcement. So unless law enforcement actually views it themselves, it's not going to be enforced.
So why have another law that you don't enforce? I live in Little Hoquiam Cove. I listen to the noise of the big, guys with the rooster tails. A lot of people love them. I don't like them. Anytime you try to go up near them and try to get a picture of their license, they're off. There's nobody around to enforce it. We're
Yeah.
just, doesn't it seem futile?
Again.
To make another law like this that you can't
Ma'am.
enforce, and you're just gonna have neighbor
Ma'am,
against
try
neighbor?
and keep it at.
I appreciate your perspective on that again, but I can only tell you that my responsibility is to the county commissioners, and when they ask me to put something forth for them and the public
Well,
to consider,
I signed up
that's what,
to also
that's
ask,
what
but
I
I
do,
thought
so.
everybody else was asking. Why not ask them all?
No, I appreciate that, and I don't, I'm not here to dispute what you're saying, I'm just simply saying, my role is not to make a determination about whether or not that is a
And I know your
determining factor.
constraints.
Thank you, I appreciate that, yes.
Sir.
Why leave it to the sheriff's office to have to interpret what lakes ballasted wake boating could occur on? By my understanding of this, including making inquiries with the sheriff's office about this proposed legislation, it seems like Mason Lake and Lake Cushman are gonna be the only places where wake boating could occur. Is that correct? And if so, well, if not, please tell me what other lakes. And if it is correct, why not just say that instead of leaving it open to confusion for anybody looking at the ordinance?
Because again, I didn't have access to data for lake depth for all of the lakes for year-round in Mason County. I did look at the state, I did look through DNR, I looked through Washington Department of Wildlife, anybody else who might have bathymetric and depth data for lakes. What I was able to find was that there's probably a limited number of lakes that during some times of the year, it wouldn't be prohibited. Now, granted, you might not want to wakeboard in January, and I completely get that. I've lived here my whole life. But again, I couldn't really say based on the data that I had available to me that a certain lake doesn't drop more in depth at some time of year than other. And so I don't know.
Okay.
For example, Spencer Lake, the best data that I could find was Spencer Lake probably would be allowable most times of the year unless there's some other data out there that I don't know of. But I don't know the answer.
All right, well, to follow up on that, if you, as a former deputy sheriff in charge of the Marine Patrol Division, don't have access to that information, how is anybody reading this ordinance supposed to know where we can use our very expensive boats that we've invested in? I understand your previous answer about your job towards the commissioners, I get that, I'm not trying to attack that. But an ordinance should be understandable for those it is to be enforced against. So how are we supposed to understand what this all means if you're not even sure, with all your experience, whether a certain lake may or may not be usable?
Yes, well, my presumption is that the Sheriff's Office of Marine Enforcement Unit would have a lot more time to go through and sift through Mason Lake data and be able to make those determinations. And if it's not specifically a violation, then it can't be enforced. And so if they can't show that it's an obvious violation, then it wouldn't be enforceable.
There is bathymetric data available from the State Department of Ecology and
Yes,
also.
and I did look at that, yes. What I couldn't find, and maybe you know, I'm not a super techno nerd, was I could only find it for a single point in time. I couldn't find it historically. So I was trying to find data that would show it in January and March and, July, and I couldn't find that data. And so, and I'm familiar with that lake, and I know that lake, the depth changes significantly. But what I didn't personally know, and the data that I couldn't find, was whether Spencer Lake changes dramatically in depth or some of the other lakes, and I don't know the answer.
So one of the studies I read online, again, not from Washington State, Wisconsin, where they were fighting this, the rebuttaling and all that, was the wakeboarding boats affect more the bottom of the lake. The wake surfing
So,
Doesn't
are we
affect-
going for a question here?
I'm
or-
gonna ask,
Okay.
sorry, sir. So the wake surfers boats affects more the shoreline. So if I could find that information, I'm sure you probably read that as well, because I sat down my computer for an hour trying to look at back and forth studies that have been done on this. So if you have already conflicting, why are you making the rule a certain depth just for wake surfing boats?
I wasn't trying to make any distinction between any type of
Because I heard
activity.
you say it would be lakes that had to be at least 20 feet.
Right, but I wasn't trying
30,
to.
you wanted 30.
I wasn't trying to make any distinction between whether it was inner tubing or skiing or wake surfing or wakeboarding or anything else. The distinction I was trying to make was the features of the boat, which specifically was what's listed in the ordinance. The fact that you can load the ballasts in order to sink the boat, create a much bigger wake, hull design, those kind of things.
Like I said, in the research I saw was that the bigger wave was affecting more of the shoreline, not the depth of the wave.
So, we really want to try and keep this to questions for the staff. You'll
Okay.
have an opportunity to give
Well,
your
it's just
testimony.
why the ordinance is set at a certain depth for wake surf boats, if there's also.
I'm gonna give you the short
information.
answer. That was the best information that
Oh.
he could come up with at the time.
Okay.
Ma'am, go ahead.
So with the sheriff's department really low on officers, you call for a theft or whatever, they can't come out for 5 hours. Is it gonna change? Are we gonna get, is the commission willing to give millions more for more sheriffs and more time to regulate this thing? I think maybe we need to be worrying about the theft and the drugs and everything else that we have going on in the county over.
So again, is this a question
No,
for
it-
staff?
It is, he was in the sheriff's department, and I'm just asking, he's the administrator, he does the money, so is there gonna be more money for more sheriffs, or how's it gonna be regulated?
That would not be a question for the administrator. That would be, the budget is controlled by the county
Oh,
commissioners.
okay. Okay.
I have a question. Does the sheriff's department have a drone operation?
They do have one who's a certified drone operator, and I think they were trying to get a couple more going, and I believe that they have them for both SWAT and search and rescue.
Because I know that you'd have to see the violation, because we've dealt with that at the Port of Gracie. And people are going underneath the Treasure Island Bridge at Mach 4, okay, instead of 6 miles an hour. So, but you gotta see it, so. Thank you.
Yeah, and that actually is a good question and a good idea for the sheriff's office, is whether or not they can engage drone operations to catch behavior and activity.
Just think about it.
All
Versus
types,
showing
all
up.
types of activity versus, coming up with their giant boat and scaring everybody off the lake.
So I'm gonna switch over to the Zoom room here to see if they have any questions. They've been locked out for quite a while, so. Anybody in the Zoom space have a question for staff? Remember, try and keep it in the form of a question. Seeing none, then I'm gonna go ahead and close this question period, and we will move into the next phase of our comment, which will be the public comment, which is what, before we do that, Commissioner Nedlin wanted to make a comment.
So I'm an old dog here. I've been around a long time, and we were talking earlier, two of the biggest ones we've ever seen were, of course, when we were dealing with our waterways one time, and when we were dealing with marijuana a long time ago. And there's a little misconception on how some of this stuff works. So this gentleman doesn't make any decisions at all, zero. And so when you're questioning him in those certain manners, it doesn't make a difference. What his job was to do, and it was not at my request, so I'm telling you, I'm an outsider trying to find a way to make it all work. What his job was to do was to put together by request what one would look like. That doesn't mean that's what gets passed. That's what this is. And when you're talking to these people, understand there's gonna be times you're gonna be on opposite sides of them. We're the ones you're gonna talk to, because we're the only ones that are gonna make the decision. And the decision is not made. Because you have a document in front of you doesn't mean anything, okay? It could not happen, or it could happen fully in its entirety, or it can be changed all the way through. But I'd like to ask and remind you that these are all your neighbors, as you were all explaining. And it'd be nice if we had, Grays Harbor has a $10 million sheriff's budget, ours is $20 million. We definitely take it seriously in Mason County, more than any of the other ones. But at the same time, when you make a law, you put a lock on a door to keep the honest man out, okay? So if we put some kind of law in place, it's the hope that people will follow it. But we have done homework that isn't in that. He's been studying his rear end off, and I know I have, and I've met with people with their different issues. That's our job. So when you get angry up here, if you do, please direct it only to us, because it isn't nobody else's fault, and it certainly isn't staff. But remember, nothing that you've read is in stone. That's what the meeting is. This is how we talk with people. This is how we have the interactions. It could be to do nothing. It could be to table it. It could be to do entirely yes. But this is your opportunity to tell us those ideas that you have, or to tell us your opinion. And then we will make our adjustments based on those opinions. But it's not already decided. So please, be kind to each other when you come up here. And I don't mind if you yell at me. Yell at me all you like. It's all right. I'm used to it. Thank you for that, Commissioner.
Yeah, I would, I just add to that. This is not something that, as Randy said, it's not set in stone. I've told both sides, I am totally conflicted over this. I haven't made up my mind yet. You know, up until this point, our job here is to protect people's rights. That's really the function of government. So we have two issues, and I'm not gonna, we'll get to that later, but I have not yet made up my mind. That's what we're here for, is to listen to what you guys have to say and get input. And we may not do anything at all, but that's the point. So I will open up the public testimony. I will ask that when you're finished, if you could step outside and allow somebody else to come in, because there's quite a few people outside that would like to have an opportunity. Try and keep it as brief as you can, but say what you need to. We'll limit it to 10 minutes, and then I will open up public testimony.
Is there a list?
So,
Oh,
I'm from the Zoom room.
I know, but he'll catch everybody, but he has to call on you. That's
yeah. So, if you wanna, okay, step right up. Please state your name and.
Good morning. My name is Deborah Akins. I've been living at Island Lake since 2006. Some of you know me, a lot don't. Just wanted to bring up the fact, it's hard, the fact that you make rules because that's what we do. But I'm worried about people's constitutional rights, that they bought this property. They're paying their taxes, huge, by the way. And we, the people, I do not own a boat like that, okay? But I appreciate everyone's rights to use what they've bought, who live there and deserve that right to use their equipment. Some people don't like it. I don't love it, but you have the right to use your boats and to use your property the way you want. You pay for it. I also have the privilege of living next door to a public boat dock at Island Lake. I feel like a babysitter. I am up at 2 a.m. going over there. Stop your party, stop your drinking, stop making babies, stop selling drugs, you know. My son thinks I need a gun. It is scary. But I feel the more people use it, if I don't go over and address it that night, they come all the time. Sometimes it's dangerous. I try to not call the sheriff because he's busy, and I gauge that. But the thing I wanted to bring up is, even if I don't like the sound, it's your right with your equipment. You paid your money, you pay your taxes, and you constitutionally should represent yourselves and come and say something. But enforcement, that's our big deal. We can't make rules and laws that we can't enforce. We don't have the people, we don't have the time, we don't have the energy, because it's so frustrating. people not using common sense, etc. Anyway, I needed to bring those things up, saying that I believe you have the right, even though I don't have one, okay? But that's why we bought our land. That's why we're paying this money. So I appreciate you listening. Thank you.
Thank you. And that's how it's done.
I would like to also ask that we kind of alternate, because there's gonna be a lot of people on both sides. So instead of just going all one side, so if anybody would like to speak in favor of this, please step up.
neutral.
Okay, that's fine.
Aren't we going?
I didn't understand your question.
In favor of the ordinance or opposed to the ordinance? I'd like to try to divide it, going back and forth.
In the middle of the road, where would I fit in then?
You could pick through, whichever one you want to do. Go, what? Yes, ma'am.
Let's just keep it record.
Hi, my name is Kathy Fox, and I have property on Phillips Lake. My grandparents bought it in 1946, a couple years before I was born, so I have spent many, many days and hours out there. It's just recreational property for us, even though I have 300 feet of waterfront. We don't have enough backland to get a septic and well in, so we just camp and sleep on the dock and swim in the water and all this kind of stuff. And that is a major investment when you buy property that needs to be protected as well. Maybe your boat needs to be protected, but the property needs to be protected as well. I've watched the shoreline change over so many years, and most of the damage has been in the last, 8 or 10 years when the wake boats have been a thing. Our lake is small, it's 18 to 20 feet deep usually, and it's in a butterfly shape, so this really kind of two small lakes put together. So people have trouble getting too far offshore. In fact, they won't even stay 150 feet offshore, saying things, well, yeah, but we have a small lake. I go, yeah, but we have a small lake. And it's just doing more damage and so on when you don't follow the current regulations. There's a couple places in my property, I can put a kayak paddle underneath perpendicular to the shoreline, and it goes back about 6 feet because there's been so much wash. I don't have bulkhead on most of my property, which the Department of Ecology likes because they need to have water washing in a lake for a good lake. Growing up there, the ski boats, the party boats, and all those other boats, they don't have that big of a wake. I still watch them, roll into shore, and it's the lake can absorb it. The lake wasn't meant, even in a horrible winter storm, I don't think it has rolling waves like an ocean, which is what the wakeboard boats do. I have whitecaps rolling into my property, and I'm on the point, so I get kind of the concave, get a lot of waves here, and the biggest problem, I think, is safety for children. My 3-year-old grandson, even when he was 2, he'd jump off the diving board with his life jacket on and swim into shore. One time he was swimming into shore and I was out on the floaty thing. I couldn't get to him. I saw a wave coming in and I just picked him up and threw him into the bushes. He was scarred and he was scared. And I think maybe public safety has to be a great consideration when you consider this, because I know he's not the only child that has been injured. And I guess I've never heard of any deaths on Phillips Lake or any other lakes regarding this, but it's so easy for that to happen. And somebody suggested, well, why don't you just not have them swim when the boats are out? The boats are out all day long, and I don't see them until they come around the corner and boom, the waves are upon us. And children have a right to swim all day long too. My kids are in the water early in the morning, they get out late at night. Let me see if I have together. Oh, we have a 1942 vintage rowboat, wooden rowboat, that my husband carefully restored. And the wave action, even though we have the bungee type cords on the end of the boats, was so rough that it tore off the cleats twice, he fixed it. And then he put the rope around the railing, well, then that broke. And now he has to put the rope around the whole seat. So maybe that'll come off too, I don't know, I don't think so, I think that should be pretty. But it's, you know, it's ruined our shoreline, it's ruined our boat. One of our neighbors got a boat and put it on the poles, these stick out, we call those.
The whips.
Yeah, the whips. And they found it wasn't adequate to keep their boat safe and had to get rid of them and buy one of the boat lifts, which is quite a bit more expensive. So, let me think, anything else I wanted to. Well, I do want to thank you for taking this situation very seriously. I know wakeboarding looks like a lot of fun. I water skied when I was 6, and I go, look out there, gee, that looks like fun, but it's not the right kind of lake. And I want to thank you for considering changing the law to prioritize child safety and personal property over people who have bought a boat. My property costs more than their boat. Thank you.
This gentleman, I think, is. Thank you. Again, please state your name.
Sure.
Where are you from?
My name's John Rich. I live on Mason Lake. One of the lakes that the conversation, as I understand it, and I could be wrong, is we're being asked to take on the burden of all of the wake boats in Mason County, except for Lake Cushman. As we know, last year, Lake Cushman was closed a large period of time because of fire. That could happen at Mason Lake just as easily, which would put a huge burden on Lake Cushman for wakeboarders, et cetera. I'm not a wakeboarder, I'm not a skier, I am a boater, I fish. If you live on Mason Lake, you probably see me fishing. It doesn't mean I don't run up and down the lake or anything like that. But I've seen over the 9 years that I've been a property owner and the 6 years that I've been a resident of Mason County and a voter in Mason County, I've seen the increase of traffic on Mason Lake. As we know, and I don't know the numbers, there are a lot of people that are not from Mason County that use all of these lakes. They use them for wakeboarding, boating, sailing, stand-up boards, etc. On Saturdays and Sundays on Mason Lake, starting about 11 o'clock in the morning for small boaters, for children, as this lady was, wherever she went to, was talking about. For my wife who's on a kayak trying to come back to shore, it's almost impossible. It's like an ocean, as people have said. It's white caps with no wind. We can talk about damage to shoreline. We can talk about people that have huge investments in their boats. As this young lady also mentioned, her property is worth a lot more than one boat. There's 900 plus property owners on Mason Lake. I haven't talked to every one of them. But a lot of my neighbors do not want to absorb the burden of cash loss because we have to repair our properties because other people don't want to repair properties on their lake or take action that would protect their properties. I think it's unfair for other residents of Mason County to ask me as a resident and property owner and voter and taxpayer in Mason County to take on that burden. I can talk about how my dock's been undermined, how my shoreline's decreasing. Every person in this room that lives on the lake has that story. The only suggestion I've ever been able to come up with that's fit, that I think is fair, and as we talked about earlier, there's going to be people that walk away from this that don't like me at all after my conversation or think I'm smart or whatever, or disagree. There's always going to be 1 unhappy, 10 unhappy, 1,000 unhappy people about the regulations that occur from this. I do think that whatever regulations do occur, the majority of people are going to follow them. We're going to have a few people we're going to have a problem with it. We have that now. We know that racing up and down the boat, Mason Lake at faster than 50 miles an hour is against the law. We know that. There's no doubt about it. We see it all the time on the weekends. We see accidents as a result of that. My big concern, though, is public safety. I want to see my wife be able to go out on a Saturday morning and be able to get back onto the beach safely, which she can't do frequently. I can't put my boat back on my lift frequently because I've got to wait 20 minutes for every wave to go by. Doesn't mean I don't want you water skiing or wakeboarding or anything. My only suggestion is that everybody should be able to use the lake for a reasonable period of time. Whatever that might be. Maybe we'd have an hourly time where skiers, jet skiers, whatever can use it. There's 400 lakes in the state of Washington that are regulated. whether it's wakeboards or absolute ban on jet skis, personal watercraft, whatever you want to call them, those rules exist around the state. It's not like this is the first time we've taken a look at regulating this kind of stuff. And so for me, public safety is really big. Of course, my property values are important. They're important to everybody here. And I know people have big investments in boats. I have a big investment in a boat too. But it doesn't mean that I want my neighbor to spend money because I want to run my boat. That's unfair. And I think that in fairness, we should share the burden of these wake boats or get rid of them all, one or the other. I don't favor getting rid of them all, but I am in favor of sharing the burden and the cost of operating these boats. The Mason Lake, and Benson Lake is included us, we have an LID, Lake Improvement District. We're already paying money to clean the lake, to keep the weeds out that come with all the boats that don't live on the lake. We have the airplanes that land to wash off the salt water and scum off of their boats, off their planes on our freshwater lake. We've seen the clouds of algae and all these other kinds of things, and you talk about in the purpose of this is to regulate wake-enhanced motorboat operation on lakes within Mason County in order to protect shoreline, aquatic habitat, water quality, and public safety while allowing such operation only where lake depth and configuration can reasonably accommodate enhanced wake activity without causing undue harm. Well, causing undue harm kind of falls into two subjects, subjective and objective. One's an opinion, one's a fact. We have some facts that came from this gentleman here about depth and stuff like that. We can talk about envelopes. If it was 500 feet at the south end of Mason Lake, if it was 500-foot envelope from both shorelines, that would leave 350 feet only for people to operate in that length, and I don't think that can be done. Other parts of the lake, like Little Hoquiam, I don't think they could jet ski or water ski at all, or wakeboard, whatever. The water's too shallow. I know that for sure, because I measure it, because I'm out there fishing. It's 20 feet. So I think that what I'm trying to get at is it should be fair. Mason Lake should not take on the burden of every person that owns a wakeboat. I think that's totally unfair. I think there's plenty of property owners who have big time investments in boats and property. And I recognize that, and I want them to have equity within that, but I want my equity as well. And I don't want to pay for other people to jet ski or water ski. And just as a comment that I've talked about with Randy before and Art Winston also is that we don't have any fees for launching boats in Mason County. I think that that's ridiculous. The majority of counties across the state have, in the larger lakes, they have a fee, they have a parking fee, we have cleaning stations. Those things would help with the habitat and safety and water quality if we were to include this as part of this regulation. I sent to Art, and I think to Randy also, I sent a photograph of a non-water operated boat cleaner that they use up at Lake Crescent. And I'm not saying they're smarter or dumber than us. It's affordable. Whether the county paid for it, or everybody in Mason County came up, I think $18 is what I figured out at Mason Lake. We could do this, and it doesn't, it's all self-sustaining. We already have power out there, so we can regulate these things. And the last thing I wanted to say is on the back is that it said the county may install signs regarding these regulations. I think that's absurd. It will, I think it should say it will put up signs. And I think people will follow the rules if they know what the rules are. We're always going to get somebody we got to call the sheriff on. That's just the way it is. But I've probably spoken enough. Like I said, I'm for equity for everybody, not just for some. And I don't think it's realistic to reiterate that some lakes are going to say, hey, our lake is more important, our property values are more important than yours. That's just unfair. And I'd like that to be addressed within the regulations. Thank you very much.
He's looking at me. No, he's already stopped.
I snuck on. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Michael Coydall. I'm the chair of the Mason Lake Lake Management District's number 2. Since 2019, I've represented our volunteer advisory committee, which is dedicated to managing noxious aquatic plants. The management district was formed in 2002 to protect Mason Lake from invasive Eurasian milfoil. Notably, Mason Lake property owners voted to tax themselves to fund these vital operations. Over the last 7 years alone, our community has spent over $250,000 to manage invasive species. We continue to struggle with the treatment of Sagittaria and the continual monitoring required for Eurasian milfoil. It is our firm position that currently the proposed ordinance would significantly impact Mason Lake. Boat traffic will increase, potentially introducing more invasive species into our waters. Extreme wake generated by wake boats will accelerate shoreline erosion. Together with these, threaten our water quality, our fish habitats, and endangered or rare species. One rare Washington state plant, water lobelia, is specifically impacted by the shoreline erosion, which was validated by Wes Grissom from the state ecology. To properly assess these critical risks to the health of Mason Lake, we formally request that the county provide a full environmental impact statement as required by the State Environmental Policy Act, SEPA. This study will essentially accurately determine what the scope of the risk to the lake is, identify necessary mitigation strategies, and allow us to plan accordingly. Thank you. Any questions?
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Michael Parker, and I am the owner of a Phillips Lake waterfront home and a wake-enabled boat, so this will impact me in 2 ways. I ask you not to pass a county-wide ordinance. My wife and I purchased this home in 2020 knowing that boating was part of the lake life. It's exactly why we bought it. I imagine all the property owners who have ever purchased did exactly that. They knew what they were purchasing. In fact, it's probably the reason you did so. Even during Phillip Lake's busiest times, which I would say occur only a couple weekends a year, wakes from boats do not generate waves that cannot be dealt with. Everything that everyone has said in here is true. That the waves are larger and they can cause erosion. But my younger son would want me to tell you he actually enjoys those waves and would like to see them continue. I read the article that proposed ordinance genesis at Island Lake and the property erosion claims. As a property owner, I understand those, but all lakeside property owners should take steps they deem necessary to protect their properties. I have a bulkhead for that exact reason. I've continued to work and maintain the shoreline for that exact reason, whether it was from weather or from wakes. Like many owners on Phillips Lake, I've also been in the process of redeveloping our property. I've removed derelict buildings, I've put new ones on, I've invested in septic and water systems to protect the environment. All of these improvements, including those I plan to make in the future, are predicated on the use of the lake in this manner. And I would have to reconsider them if this ordinance were to pass. I believe banning wake surfing is also potentially a first step towards banning motorboats on the lakes of Mason County. Even if you disagree, such a decision would impact the property owners, visitors, and business owners. The proposed ordinance will have an impact on property values for all the lakes impacted. This not only injures the property owners themselves, but it will impact Mason County when the assessor's office reduces the value and the associated taxes. As the owner of the McDonald's in Belfair, I understand the significant number of visitors that come to Mason County every summer to enjoy these activities. The proposed ordinance will have a negative impact on the number of people coming and the benefits that come to businesses like mine. In summary, I feel this ordinance is not positive for me, my family, Phillips Lake, my Phillips Lake neighbors, my continued investment here in Mason County, my business here in Mason County. And with a list like that, I don't think you should make an ordinance in this manner. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to take a break for this and get to somebody online because we're gonna end up ignoring them if we try and keep it all here. So let's hear somebody from the Zoom room. I see one individual with their hand raised.
Donald?
David Miner? Miner?
Yeah, hi.
Thank you for that.
Thank you to the county and the commissioners for responding to the public input and trying to address this issue. I know it's tough and there's a lot of work. My family has owned property on Lost Lake for nearly 6 decades, so I personally have watched how this lake has changed over generations. This lake will be considered a small lake under this ordinance. I agree with the majority of feedback the county has received about this ordinance and fully support the ordinance being considered by the county commissioners. If anything, I think it could be stronger and should follow the abundance of science that shows setbacks and depths should be greater than what is being proposed. I want to reiterate the point that this ordinance only restricts one kind of boats on specific lakes. It does not limit wakeboarding, water skiing, or other water activities we may have all enjoyed for decades. It protects many other water activities from the negative impacts of wake boats. It has been announced in several newspapers, articles, and many Facebook message posts. So how someone might not be aware of it is tough to understand. 20 years ago, these modern wake surf boats did not exist on lakes like ours. Today's wake boats are fundamentally different from traditional ski boats because they're specifically engineered to create massive artificial waves. They use specifically designed hulls along with ballast systems, surf tabs, fins, and hydraulic technology to intentionally amplify the wave size and wave power. This is not normal boating. It is a completely different level of mechanical wave generation. There is a growing body of scientific research from universities, lake scientists, and environmental agencies studying wake-enhanced boating and its impacts. I've sent the Commission 12 of these studies that explain the science justifying this ordinance. Almost all of the studies suggest that the wake boats can only safely operate no closer than 600 feet from shore, with some suggesting 1,200 feet and no less than 30-foot depth. Multiple peer-reviewed studies and technical analysis have found that the wake surf boats generate significantly larger and more powerful wakes than traditional recreational boats. These wakes travel further, hit shorelines with greater force, and disturb lake bottoms at deeper depth than conventional boating activity. Researchers have raised concerns about impacts to fish spawning beds, amphibians, aquatic insects, and fragile nearshore ecosystems. The studies all conclude that smaller lakes like Lost Lake, where we live, lack the depth and width needed to safely accommodate wakeboat activity. That is why more communities across North America are beginning to adopt setback distances, depth requirements, and restrictions for wake-enhanced boatings. On Lost Lake, there are more than 150 property owners, but only about 6 own wake boats. In other words, less than 5% of lake property owners are creating impacts that the overwhelming majority of residents must absorb financially and environmentally. Many wake boats that abuse the lake are not even owned by lake residents. They are being launched from the public boat launch and brought onto the lake temporarily. Meanwhile, the costs of shoreline erosion, dock damage, bulkhead repair, environmental degradation, and loss of peaceful lake use are carried by everyone else. In addition to the overwhelming conclusion of many scientific studies, we have with our own eyes watched the lake go from an environment filled with catfish, crawfish, crappie, bass, salamanders, and bullfrogs to having just the heaviest or the hardiest of bass and stock trout. We see the shorelines eroded and more invasive plants. And this change started happening with the growing size and popularity of wake boats. This ordinance is not anti-boating in any way. It is not limiting motorsports on lakes, and it doesn't threaten to do so. I own a ski boat, a jet ski, and a fishing boat. These will not be limited. The fear-mongering about this wake boat by wake boat advocates is dishonest. This ordinance is a scientific-based attempt to protect small lakes that were never physically designed to handle this kind of activity. Please pass this ordinance now, and please pass it or at least this summer soon as possible, so that the lake does not have to suffer through another summer of abuse. A few other points I want to make based on what other people have said. The idea that property owners should absorb the cost of wake boats is crazy. Our property is worth a lot of money, and when people exercising their rights to have a boat damage my property, that's where their rights end. That's a pretty accepted standard philosophy of American law. So we need to stay with that. The costs of this devalue my property ownership. Banning wake boats will not devalue my property. Only 6 people on the lake have wake boats. So everyone else is impacted negatively by that. People don't have the rights to ruin my property. So we need to take that into consideration. The impacts to Mason Lake and Lake Cushman is not a reason to not pass this ordinance. It's a reason to limit wake boats on those lakes as well. If anything, the ordinance should be expanded. The majority of people do not want wake boats. I would suggest that to address the lack of enforcement that has been brought up, You allow citizen reporting, which has been allowed on other lakes around the US using videos. Also, people should know that the sheriff is hiring 3 more deputies to deal with lake issues, and the measurements of depth and distance from the shore are easily and publicly available. That's all I got. Thank you, guys.
So I will come back to the room. I'm gonna bounce back and forth just so that we cover as much as we can. And, go ahead.
My name is Mary Sue Steinman. I've had property on Mason Lake since 1977. I have 120 feet. I do have a wake boat. I also grew up on Lake Washington on the east side. I grew up there when there were only 2 homes on the west side or the east side of Mercer Island. My parents there had a cement bulkhead across their 110 feet. Okay, that was to protect their property. There's many things I want to say, but I do want to say it's not just wake boats that are causing this problem. My property has a natural shore. I do have some.
Ma'am, if you could address the commission, that's.
I'm sorry, okay. I do have some protection around my cedar trees, which were almost damaged over 20 years ago when the outlet was blocked. Otherwise, I have a natural shore. I have noticed since I have, at Lake Washington, my parents lived there for 60-some years. And as more and more boats got on there, and more concrete was put up. And so there were solid barriers for the waves. It didn't mean that the wave power dissipated going on natural shoreline, which it does on my property, okay? As more and more people were there, my parents' bulkhead did end up getting damaged. Yeah, they'd say that was damage to their property as they got more boats and more people used the lake. I've noticed that here at Mason Lake. As more and more people are there, more homes are being built and more concrete bulkheads being put up. So that's part of the problem also. And I don't mean to be nasty, but some people are claiming that they are having to protect their cement bulkheads. Well, you're going against nature. And whenever that wave comes, it doesn't just hit your bulkhead and then go back out. It goes in and the power goes up and goes down and starts destroying underneath your concrete. I don't know what sort of damage you're having, and I'm sorry about that. My children do use our wake boat, but we do go out into the middle because anybody who is wake surfing, you get better waves the deeper the water. And when you're out in the middle and you're driving around Mason Lake, you have to go counterclockwise. So you're going around like this. Most people wakeboard on the inside on the left. And that's where the deeper wave is. So those waves go clear across Mason Lake. They're intercepted by other waves and some of the power is dissipated. Very rarely do they do the goofy side or the right side where it would directly go onto the shore. My family tries to go by everything that they can. They also, because of all the traffic on the lake, they try to be out by 12, done on a weekend because of all the chaos that goes on. It's all the people that are there. It's all the boats. Boats go by my property and they're so close and their waves come directly onto my shore, but the waves are dissipated. So a lot of these problems are man-made, not just by one single boat. I don't know what to do about it for smaller lakes where they're being impacted by that. All I can say is if you're using a wakeboard boat on a 20-foot deep lake, you're not getting decent waves. And so, why are you doing it? The other thing because when you're trying to say a certain boat can't be on a lake, my boat has computers on it. And so I can fill up and I can put out the water. I cannot put any water in it and I can just use it as a ski boat. I can use it as a regular boat. I can use it with mid-type waves. I can change those. If I show up on your lake, you know, are you not gonna let me go on your lake when you don't even know what method of wave action I'm gonna use? I just think this is a very flawed law. And I'm with you also. I'm torn between people's rights to have their property and use it the way they enjoy it. Also for people not to damage other people's properties. That's why we try to go out into the middle of the lake. But yeah, I'm in Little Hopium Cove. I get every yahoo around that decides they want to anchor right off my dock, even though I have buoys out. I do have buoys out, and that's for the canoers, the people that are trying to go around so that they're safe. I just urge you to do with this initiative, maybe put more thought into it, maybe have a more of a community group. It just seems like identifying one boat isn't going to solve the problem of overpopulation, people not following the laws. Also, the lack of funding that the county has for enforcement on the lake. Like I said, I don't even know how to drive my boat. My son-in-law does it most of the time. And they enjoy it. They're out in the middle of Mason Lake. Anyway, those are my thoughts.
All right. Anybody want to take a pro stance on the ordinance? Sir?
Allowing?
Yes. No.
No, pro
Pro the
ordinance.
ordinance.
Pro ordinance.
Good morning, County Commissioners. My name is Todd Meyer. My family has property on Mason Lake. I am writing this letter from a family that has property on Mason Lake, and I have witnessed an increase of wake-enhanced boats negatively impacting properties. These wake-enhanced boats are damaging docks, making it damaging and dangerous to store my boat or our boats next to the docks. However, I am in favor of recreation. However, it should not negatively affect others. My ask is to please restrict the use of these boats to greater than 500 feet from dock structures on Mason Lake. Thank you.
Wow. That's all.
My name is Cale Burbridge. I have property on Lost Lake. I'm obviously against the ban or this ordinance that's being proposed. I wanted to be the first person to jump up here and talk, and I have to apologize to some people that if I came off aggressive. That's just, I'm charged. It's upsetting, and I just want to say I'm sorry about that. But I decided to wait a little bit because I did want to hear what others had to say. I mean, even though I'm against the ban, I'm pro law enforcement. I'm pro neighbor. I'm pro. I want to see the lake be healthy. I would be the first person to put together a work party to help my neighbor, even if the dock got destroyed or damaged. If I heard somebody was being disrespectful or a patron out on the lake was doing something that upset my neighbors or the people that I share the lake with, I'd be the first person to go talk to them politely and go through the right chains of what we have set forth to deal with those problems. I have a family that would probably fill this room, and they're all upset that they can't be here because they got to work and they have obligations. And I actually took today off. I'm supposed to be up in Everett right now, but I felt it was important enough to at least represent my family. And I appeal, or I was listening to this lady that she must have left, but the one that was talking about how she lives next to the boat launch, and I feel for her, and the first thing goes out in my heart is like, man, I mean, I have a mom and a grandma, and the fact that she feels like she needs to have a gun, that's just something that, as a person that lives on a lake and does deal with the boat launch at our lake, it gets me fired up about it. I think that if we're being honest about I'm going somewhere with the boat launch, I'm gonna come back to that, but as far as the actual, for being honest about the wakeboard boats and their activity, I can't speak for Mason Lake, I don't live there, I can't speak for any other lake but Lost Lake. But I was just curious, so I took my wife's calendar last year and I kind of jotted, she's real good about taking notes and stuff, and I kind of looked up, like, how many hot days were we talking about? Because we live in Washington. I mean, there's only 3 months a year that we get to use our boats. I look forward to it for 9 months of the year, and finally when it gets there, I get to use it for 3 months, okay? And out of those 3 months, I work during the week, and so I only get to enjoy it on the weekends. And of those weekends, it's warm weekends. And because I live on Lost Lake, I can tell you firsthand that there's only, I would say, 14 or 15 days of actual boat use. And anybody who lives on Lost Lake that contests that of me, I'm talking about real boat where the guys are out there and, really having at her. And it's not 24 hours, we're talking hours of that day. So think about breaking that down. And when you're gonna measure how much damage you're talking about, I have a bulkhead. I don't see any of this damage. Now, I'm not saying that erosion doesn't happen. Of course it happens. But am I going to blame it on wakeboard boats? That's 2 dozen days of the year at the most? That's kind of unfair. And to say, particularly my family, okay, speaking from that point of view, I've invested a lot of time, energy, heart, love into Lost Lake, not just boats, but just being a patron, a community neighbor, and just loving where I live. And the reason I came there is to bring my boat and go boating activities. Now it moved on to other things like living there and went down other roads, but it started with coming there to do boat activities and behind boat activities. And I actually have a wakeboard boat. It says right on the side, Air Warrior, and I can just see right now that people pass this ordinance. You know how people are, cameras, everybody has a phone, and here's Kale again, out there videoing. Look at that wake enhance, who deems that wake is either good or bad? When you have Wake Warrior or Air Warrior on the side of your boat. I mean, I'm gonna have people calling in on me all the time. I got neighbors that love to call. Now, if they would just come and talk to me, they would know that you probably have, nobody is gonna raise their hand faster to help you out in a pinch, or even understand. But I said I was getting back to the boat launch, and I'm sorry I'm dragging on, but I'll say this. In my opinion, and according to that lady that was here earlier, and I'm sure a lot more people in this room, I know my neighbors can attest to this too, the real issue is the boat launch. I mean, I think that if we're all as lake owners, I'm not trying to speak for everybody, obviously I don't, but when that boat launch is not regulated to the point where I just would like to see it just used for what it's there for, and that's to launch and retrieve your boat. When you go in there, and you're not even allowed, like they look at you weird that you're there to launch your boat. They get upset when you talk to them. And I'm like, hey, man, if I can't get you guys to resolve this or can't get you to work with me, I'm going to have to call the cops, and I don't want to. But you're making me. And I think that the volume of people that come in there and the type of people, not everybody, okay, but a lot of the people that come in there, they're the main violators. They come and they double and triple the volume of Lost Lake. Again, I don't know other lakes. I'm just saying they double and triple. And by simply just bringing the threat of a sheriff coming out or somebody that's I don't want to go there. I was going to say I'll throw on a badge as community citizen, law enforcement, or whatever. But the thing of it is that is the true problem. Is the boat launch. If you took that away and you were just subjected to the people who own and pay property taxes and take vested interest in that lake, those people are not the problems. And I would just say that in conclusion, I had to rebuild my dock, okay? And you could drive a truck on it. And my boat, I do get waves. I can honestly tell you that my neighbor, myself, I see no erosion that's not caused by significant or strictly boat activities, because there's 365 days in a year, and if you lived out on Lost Lake and seen what kind of storms you have, that is what takes your erosion. I'm not saying boats don't have a small part in it, but relatively speaking, when you take it out there, being honest, okay? You're fighting 14 to 15 days of surfing a year. And I'm not ready to say, you know, I feel bad about people who say, oh, you know, they come out there like, yeah, it pisses somebody off that somebody that's not from that lake, be loud music, they come in and being disrespectful, and to boot, you know, they're congesting your lake, not following the rules, and throwing these big waves. They're not the people who live there. It's the people that come from the boat launch. And my neighbor, he has a wakeboard boat. I see them always going to the center and always being courteous and respectful. And the wakes are manageable. And we know that, like I said, and the last thing I'll say, I'll sit down. The Sea-Doos are just like, they give me anxiety. I hate when they drive near me when I'm pulling my kids and stuff. But I don't go as far as to think that I would go ban them or put forth some sort of ordinance, and because I know it would take away from all the families who do follow the rules. It's like that rule where it's like, you know, you got one bad egg, ruins it for everybody. And I just would hate to see, you know, the one bad egg ruining it for everybody, because I'm telling you, the patrons on Lost Lake, I don't know about the other ones, but the people who live there do care. And I'm just the biologist in here, about whoever was saying about the algae and stuff, man, that's disturbing to me as a person who lives on the lake, and I want to know more about that. I mean, I'm not, and that's somebody who owns a boat, and like I very much care about Lost Lake and the health of it. So I would say, in conclusion, against the ban. I would just say that people need to pull their head out of their asses and be respectful, and I think that they need to really increase. That's the answer, in my opinion, is increasing law enforcement or regular people. Somebody's coming out and looking at the boat launches, at least for Lost Lake. Thank you.
I'm not sure exactly who's first, but, yeah. All right.
I have to leave in just a moment. I just want to comment. The lady at the boat launch was my mom. She said she doesn't have a boat that does that. Her boat would be directly affected by this. There is a wake shaper on the side that my son wakeboards around the lake on all the time. I think I would urge that this commission, everyone's saying everything the same way that we are. I'm obviously against this. We moved out here. We're enjoying the lakes. We're having a good time. People are making adjustments that live on the lake, that have these boats. They have been changing the wake. They're doing it to the inside. They've been making changes to accommodate people's docks and some of the issues. I'd urge this commission to really consider, if there's this much contention. You said in one of the meetings earlier, we were talking about trying to make a rule, and you need to be able to enforce that rule. You need to be able to define that. What's a wake trim? What's a wake board? If I put a bunch of beer in the back of my mom's ski boat, is that now ballast? Where are we gonna go? And where are we gonna get? I just, real quick, wanted to keep that short and sweet.
And your name, sir?
Luke Akins. My mom's right next to the boat launch, and that is not fun.
Which lake?
Island Lake.
I'm going to jump back to the Zoom meeting here for a minute, just so that somebody in that space can have their opportunity to speak if they so choose. If you're in the Zoom space and you want to make a comment, all right. I'm not seeing anybody, so we'll come back to reality. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Victoria Byington, part of 4 generations on Lake Nolazl. And I think I started noticing wake boats about 2015, 2016 timeframe. Now, I'm a kid that grew up every summer on that lake and catching the salamanders that are no longer there and all that stuff. Looking in the water now as the wake boats go by, one, it's hard to do because your dock is doing this. You can't relax. And the water is disgusting. Our lake is a beautiful, clear lake. It's got an outlet creek, the water refreshes, all that stuff, but the wake boats And I don't have a bulkhead. The wake boats are the problem. I don't like jet skiers. I don't complain about them. I grew up water skiing on that lake. There's no comparison to the waves produced by ski boats versus wake boats. Now, I'll try to get more succinct.
Can I catch your name again? Because I'm sorry, I didn't write it down.
Oh, it's Victoria Byington.
Byington?
Byington, out at Lake Nawansel.
Thank you.
So people who use wake boats on the lake argue against a ban because it will deprive them of their fun, as if there is no other water sports to be enjoyed. They argue that a wake boat ban would be a slippery slope to other water sports being banned. And I believe that the Mason County Commissioners understand that this is about wake boats and their waves only. There is just no keeping wake boat waves in the middle of our small lake, as the wake boat owners, some, have proposed to do. There's just not enough depth or circumference to Lake Nawansel for there to be adequate energy dispersal. Physics is physics. Just like the Earth is an oblate spheroid due to the interaction between gravity and rotation, the physics of wake boats on small, shallow lakes, like our glorious Lake Nawansel, results in significant ecological impacts. Because wake boat engineering depends on deep water to manage energy. When operating in shallow water, the high energy from ballast-weighted hulls and powerful propeller wash directly disturbs the lake bed. This destructive force not only causes significant shoreline erosion, but also degrades water quality on a sustained basis, hours and hours and hours. Batters and damages our docks well beyond normal wear and tear. Plus, the large, I won't use that word, wake boat waves noticeably interfere with the enjoyment of other motorized watercraft, swimmers, kayakers, canoers, and paddleboarders. When they're on the lake, it's impossible to enjoy that kind of fun. On our lake, again, it's Lake Nawansel, pretty small. The crux of the situation is the physics of wake boats and the necessity for consideration of our responsibility to nurture our natural resources. I believe wholeheartedly that wake boats should no more be allowed on Lake Nawansel than we should allow barrels of toxic chemicals to be dumped in it. And that's all I have to say about that.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
Call on her, and you go next.
Hi, my name is Jessie Farrington. I live on Island Lake, and I am against this proposal 100%. And as contentious as it is, I can't see you guys making a decision anytime soon. There is way too much at stake. I love our lake, and like they said, living in Washington, there are so few days that our lake is busy with wake boats or otherwise. You get the relaxed enjoyment of it most of the year. And then you can enjoy the excitement of the kids, of the people, of everything that's going on the lake, and sit back and just go, wow. Even if you don't do it, it's pretty impressive. It's fun to watch. Everybody's enjoying themselves, and it takes so little time. And I do feel like this is one of those situations, like we talk about the millionaire's tax, it's gonna come down. And pretty soon, we do hate the jet skis. Oh, how many people hate jet skis? Let's get rid of those. Now, we talk about safety, the wake boats go really slow. Yes, they make a wave, but they go very slow. They're not likely to hit a kayaker or a fisherman or anybody else because they're moving at such a slow pace. And as one of the older people, and I do kayak and I do water ski, I love being out on the water with the waves. It's a lot of fun, just like that guy said. His kids love it too. It's fun to be out on the boat with those waves that we don't get most of the time. And I just feel the economic impact, people's property values will go down if you do this. We're gonna drive certain people out of Mason County if they can't have their boats on their property that they have. And with all the other economic problems we have, we don't need to lose our better tax base. That would be a bad thing. And also, it's been mentioned, it's another law we really can't even afford to enforce. We should be spending our money on something way more important than going out and ticketing somebody for being out on their wake boat. The boat launch is a big issue. That contributes a lot to the degradation of the lakes. And on Island Lake, it says that the gate will be locked between certain hours. And I don't know who's supposed to do it, but nobody ever does it. And sometimes when people on the lake go over and attempt to close the gate, they just cut holes in the fence and go through it, and nobody cares. But the boats that come in, they're not regulated. They're not from Mason County usually. They're come in with algae and snails and things from other lakes that if we wanted to spending money to improve the boat launches would be a place to go. And again, on Island Lake, if we really want to improve Island Lake, we need to get rid of the geese. They're the ones that are degrading the water quality. And it's going to be closed fairly soon if we don't do something about that. But it's not the wake boats. The wake boats help keep the geese away. So,
Mike.
Oh, where do I begin?
State your name and.
I'm directing this at you two guys.
State your name, where you begin. State
And
your
my name is
and-
Mike Jones. I live on Island Lake. I've been there for 12 years. I'm a biologist, an educator, nationally ranked. I flew combat helicopters in Vietnam, so I'm used to a little friction. But I'd like you to open up the book that I gave you. It's not quite a book. If you go to the last couple of pages, you'll see pictures of a lake. It's not too far from here. It's called Big Lake. It's in Skagit County. They are having a huge problem with wake boats. Now, I'm in the middle of the road. I'm just here to stamp out ignorance, okay? And science tells us a few things that are just cold, hard facts. A propeller that is facing the bottom of the lake is going to do something that's most people haven't really considered. All of us like to water our grass and fertilize things, so where do those fertilizers end up when you live on a lake? The wash takes this stuff, primarily phosphates and nitrates. They go into the water, and over time they settle to the bottom and they're entrapped in the mud. You come along with a propeller that's pushing water down to a depth of maybe 20, 30 feet, you reintroduce that into the water column. So what have you done? You've taken food and given it to a sunlit area of the lake as this water column now gets stirred up. And you have all those nutrients now up there where they can be consumed. And so what does this do? It generates an algal bloom. And these blooms can sometimes be species that are very toxic to people. So what we want to avoid, and I don't care what other argument you want to make, if we allow the lake to become energized with food, nutrients for the algae, they're going to bloom. And even if you're only doing this part of the year, you're still going to take all that stuff that's accumulated over the years and reintroduce it up into the sunlit upper waters. What's that going to do? Create an algae bloom. And it could kill the lake. So as a biologist, when I look at the effect of what we're proposing here, you've got your homework. I gave you a book, and it's got a lot of data in there. And I like data because it's something that can be reproducible and you can back it up. And it's important that we work with facts and not opinion when we form rules like this. And if I had a $250,000 wake boat, we're in a hard spot here because these things are stirring up the bottom. And I hate to think of what it would be like to have signs put up on our lake. Lake is closed by the health department because of toxic algae. And that could happen. And it's happened on Big Lake. And it's expensive to fix. In some cases, they have to kill the lake to start over again. That is biologically suicide. So I'd like to work with you guys. I have a biology lab. I do research there, and I use it to educate kids over the internet. So it's I tried to retire, but this thing turned into a hobby that got out of control. After my wife died, I took over her beautiful house, so now the living room is a lab for one thing, and the studio for another thing is in the formal dining room. She's probably looking down and saying, "What did you do to my living room?" So the data is there. It's leaning towards not letting this get out of hand. And if we delay making a decision, however you make it, it's just going to make it harder to enforce it. We have, 5, 6 boats on our lake, wake boats. If you don't come up with a decision one way or the other, and we let this problem fester, it's going to be very hard to do anything about it. So that's my plea, is to look at cold, hard facts, set the opinions aside, and listen to the science. And if you'd like to come out and look at my setup and see the data, I've already started collecting information on phosphate levels in the lake, which is our #1 indicator of the health of our lake. And our lake, by the way, there are 3 categories of lake health. And it's if it's a healthy lake like Lake Crescent, which is that is the gold standard. If you've been there, you can see way deep. It's called a oligotrophic lake. A mesotrophic lake is it's starting to get a little polluted. When one is totally gone, it's dead. Then you've got problems with lack of oxygen, dead zones, that kind of stuff. We are right between the border of a perfect lake and the next category. The only thing that's driving us towards the bad end is phosphates and nitrates that we're putting into our lake through runoff from fertilizers and leaching fields and septic tanks that are not working properly. So we're feeding the algae. We've got to stop feeding the algae. That's the crux of the problem. Anyway, anybody like to come out and see the operation, see what we do? We've got microscopes, we can look at stuff. When you go swimming on our lake, you're not alone. There's a lot of stuff out there that's good. Thank you.
We may take you on that. Very good. Sorry.
My name is Jim Manley, live at 400 East Phillips Lake Loop Road. To tell you some of my history, I started off as on the Planning Commission in the city of Milton. I became the chairman of the Planning Commission. I then became a city councilman. I became the mayor pro tem of Milton. Tell you this minutia, only to the fact that I understand where you guys are at. You're gonna make a lot of people mad no matter which way you go on this, and I understand that well. I'm retired from all that nonsense, and my most important job I've ever had is I'm a grandpa. And on my lake, I've had my kids with their life jackets waist deep or so in the water and have a wake surf boat come by, and they all got tossed onto the cement background that I had. One of them got hurt and scraped up in the arms. They decided they didn't want to get in the water for half the summer because they were all afraid of what was going to happen to them. is not just a water purity issue. It's not, there's a lot of property damage being done, but that's another issue. I could deal with that to a great extent. I have my boat being damaged, I have my pontoon boat being damaged, I have my dock I've had to repair a dozen times. None of that really pissed me off until my kids were hurt. My most important job as a grandpa, I can't allow that. Now, a lot of people have said it takes away the right of what you can do on the lake. You bought this lake so you could enjoy it. Somebody also brought up it can be enjoyed by so many different ways. And it's not that the boat is illegal, it's the enhancement is what this thing is brought up with. Travis, I think it was written very well for the fact that we're talking about enhancing the wave. My kids were wakeboarding behind my outboard boat for a long time, and they were able to do that. It doesn't take a giant wave to go wakeboarding behind your boat. There's water skiing, and simply laying on an inner tube, out floating on the lake, and talking with our friends is another thing you should be thought of as an enjoyment. Try and do that when your wake surfboards go by. You just get tossed about. It's an enjoyment for everyone, and I want everyone to have enjoyment of the lake, but when it inflicts on your rights of the majority of the lake owners, then that's a problem. So on our lake, I'd say there's 8, 10, maybe even 12 surf boats. The rest of us don't own those kind of boats. And we have to deal with what they're doing. And in your positions, you have to stop and think, what is the best for everybody? And I know that's a hard decision to make. But I think majority of the people that are property owners around here are having to deal with the problem of these wake surf boats. But the minority of the people are the ones that have these boats that cause the problems. So that's what I have to say. Thank you.
I should kind of swing over to this side of the room, so go ahead, sir. Thank you.
All right, thank you guys for taking the time to listen to all of this. It's gonna be a long morning here, but my name's Bo Brown, and I live on Phillips Lake, and I'm one of those wakeboard owners. Admittedly, I've not spent much time on other lakes, so my experiences are limited to the lake that I live on. So, oh no, don't die on me now. Uh-oh. Old school here. So starting off here, wakeboating is a lawful established form of recreation in our state and local waterways, and I'm against this proposal. It feels a bit to me like, I understand the reasons why, but it feels to me a bit like governmental overreach, take away from our freedoms to use our public resources. So a ban, hold on. Try to get this thing open again. A ban removes the ability for families like mine who have invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in boats and properties, not just the boats, right? We continue to invest in a lot of different things here. Get to that in a minute. To use the lake as we always have, like it's been mentioned here before. That's why I bought into this lake, was to be able to use it and to be able to tow behind my boat, whatever it happens to be. So it doesn't have to be one thing. We do particularly like wake sports. That's our primary, that's what my family enjoys. So my kids come to the lake to share this sport with us, and that family gathering is now threatened by this proposal. So regulation should balance interest, not eliminate an entire group of users. So considering the economics of the impacts, so many lakefront property owners choose this area specifically for boating. Restricting access will lower property values and in turn tax revenue. When our Mason County lake properties drop, which we all expect to see due to the usage, I know there's some speculation around it, but this is what the majority of people are using. This is the boats that a lot of people go out and buy. So if these property values can't be used for what a lot of the purchases are, the values will drop because they just aren't as attractive to people anymore. So it'll further lower the tax base that this office has to work with. And having sat here several times, I understand that, revenue growth is an important conversation here, just to try to manage the different programs that you guys are already challenged with. So many of us, like myself, have chosen to purchase properties in Mason County just for the waterfront recreation. I have recently purchased a second property and are in the process of planning to build an additional building on it to support our time at the lake. Now I have to question if that is a good investment on my part. What is the county providing me for the money that I'm going to bring to you? The county should be looking for a revenue growth model that embraces utilizing its natural resources to bring in outside dollars, not make decisions to push those dollars to other counties. Somebody said it earlier. It's true. A lot of us have options. We can sell, we can move to a different, apparently not Big Lake. I think that one's just off the list now. We can move to other areas as well if we choose. So that is a factor. These lakes are a public resource meant for everyone, and this ban privileges the groups that aren't trying to use them for wake sports over another instead of promoting coexistence. So on the matter of the bulkhead and maintenance stuff, I say let's raise the floor, not lower the ceiling. So I propose we put this much effort in. The commission can help us look into making it easier to maintain our waterfronts. Many of us are owners. I'm an owner too. I've got I've got a dock, I've got a lift, I've got a bulkhead. Make it easier for us to maintain our waterfront through, I don't know, I'm just throwing some ideas, fast tracking permits, lowering the effort needed to allow us to build or repair on our properties. We're willing to work on our properties. We're willing to make sure that we can keep stuff in place and healthy if it's easy. Help make it easy so that problem can go away. So properties must be maintained. Waterfront maintenance should be no different or difficult than roof maintenance. Neighbor and I were kind of joking, is the analogy here is trees are hard on roofs. Should we go out and make a proposal that all trees be removed 50 to 100 feet from all houses? It's the same statement if you ask me, even though it sounds a little bit more preposterous. So I did have a bit here about what science went into this, but I think that's been covered quite a bit here. So these lakes get used by many boaters enjoying many different types of water sports, and I don't see how eliminating any one type of sport will create the outcome that is desired. And several people have touched on this too, but lots of boats make lots of wakes. I mean, every type of boat's going to make some level of wake. So just changing one particular use set, you're still going to get use, you're still going to get waves, you're still going to get motion, you're still going to get weather. I don't feel like it's going to get where you need to be. Last one, enforcement. So I've heard this commission talk about the challenges of enforcement of the current water rules, excluding this. So I don't know how this is going to improve anything. First, there's the structure of the wording. I still believe all boats make a wake. So how can an officer determine if wake enhancing features are being used, or if all the people in the boat weigh enough and the boat is going slow enough to make what we're considering a large wake? I could use all my I got all buttons too. I could push all those and make a wake, or I can get everyone in this room, up to 15 people. That's what's legally allowed in my boat, and we can go do the same thing. So putting that on the officers is going to be a challenge. If you can get the officer out there, because there are so many lakes and there's so few time to get everyone around there. So lastly, these are all public lakes, so people will be visiting, and not all will know of the new restrictions that what we considered normal for so long is no longer normal, and there will be wakes being generated across the county all summer long. So how does overstressing our local law enforcement for this subject help the community at large? Just hypothetically, you got people coming in, because we mentioned this before, these are public lakes, people are gonna be dropping in, so there's gonna be a boat over here. When we call up the officer, they come out, they talk to the person, at the same time, one went over to Mason Lake, and then one happened somewhere else. We're gonna be chasing our tails, and I feel like there's more impactful things we can do with our law enforcement dollars. So, in closing, I mentioned at the beginning, I live on Phillips Lake, and after many years of boating there, I feel that it's large enough to support all types of water sports without regulation. I urge the commission to pursue a balanced, science-based regulation rather than a ban that harms families, traditions, and the local economy. Thank you.
I'm going to jump off to Zoom this time. We had somebody with their hand raised here a moment ago, so in the Zoom space, someone had their hand raised, so let's...
I was that guy.
You were that guy?
Yeah.
Oh. Okay.
Somebody said go in the neighborhood.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, step on up. Now that they came back, so.
I am Malcolm Dick Jr. and reside at 51 West Outlet Creek Road on Lake Nowatzel. I suppose I should also add that I spent 4 years in the U.S. Coast Guard, 2 years of which 2 years of which was driving boats on Puget Sound, picking up the pieces of people who tried to kill themselves by doing dumb things. I am here to speak in favor of the proposed wakeboard ban on smaller lakes in Mason County, and I'd appreciate if you'd let me make 3 points. First, wake boats are damaging our shorelines and appurtenant submerged lands, and that is more than my opinion. It has been and will be noted. For example, Nawatsel has a state-threatened plant, water lobelia, that is affected by outsized boat wakes. Nawatsel has an extensive undeveloped shoreline that shelters multiple species of plants and animals, and the wake boats damage or destroy the habitat for all of these species. Secondly, docks and floats, as we have discussed, are affected by the large wakes. My dock is relatively new and was built to take normal wear and tear. The wakes from these boats ripped out a steel plate held in place by 4 large lag screws, all of which I had to replace. This dock is a substantial investment, and I do not see wake boat owners lining up to pay for the damage they do. At a minimum, they need to be held accountable for the damage they cause. Thirdly, it is claimed property values will be reduced by the ban. After watching my property values climb in recent years, I have my doubts. Until someone presents believable data, color me unconvinced. In summary, those who try to tell us the world will end if we enact the wake boat ban are perhaps a bit overwrought. I've lived on Lake Nawatsel for over 80 years. I've fished, skied, swam, inner tubed, and much more, and not once have I felt deprived. Our smaller lakes and the people who live here will be just fine without the one activity that negatively affects all other activities. Do us a favor and enact the ban. Thank you. In closing, I would say I wouldn't have your jobs for all the money in the world. Thank you.
All right, now I'll go online. I see Kay Olson, I don't. Mr. Olson, Mrs. Olson, I don't know who that is. Kay Olson. All right.
Are you both in the same room?
All right, so here we go. So I'm Scott Olson, I live at Lost Lake. First of all, I think most people will be anxious to consider buying your house when you want to sell it because you can't wakeboard anymore on any lake in this county. Waterfront property values keep to go up, and I think they'll continue to go up, and I think they'll even increase when our lakes become safer for all to use. Also, I've been on this lake coming up here since 1962. So I have a lot of history on how this lake used to be and the wildlife around it and the aquatic life in it. And for the most part, it has disappeared. And so we kayak, we paddleboard, we swim, fish, and we enjoy our quiet recreation. I had a boat that sunk, tied up to the dock because of wake activity years ago, and I said, I'm done. So the massive surf wakes roll across the entire lake repeatedly and make it unsafe for paddleboarders, kayakers, and swimmers. We see it constantly, especially when the YMCA has kids up here. And the larger bowl, which is where some people think this is the place to wakeboard now because the smaller end is too restricted. So there's a lot more activity up here with the jet skis bombing around, the kayakers and the canoers from camp, and everybody else trying to use this water. It is impossible when the wakeboarders are out there. Fishing becomes extremely difficult when constant artificial waves disturb the shoreline and water conditions. On smaller lakes like Lost Lake, there is often no place to escape the wake. You stay in your house. You can't even stand on your dock. A wake boat cannot realistically maintain safe distances from shorelines, docks, swimmers, fishermen, and other lake users because the lake is simply too small. The issue is not whether wake boat owners deserve recreation. The issue is whether one activity should dominate the entire lake for everyone else. Right now, a small number of wake boats can effectively make the lake unusable for many other families at the same time. We have approximately 170 houses on this lake, and we have about 6 or 7 wake boats. So you can see the domination of people that don't use wake boats, opposed to the ones that do and think that they have the right to destroy our property. Lakes should remain shared community spaces where many kinds of recreation can coexist. Traditional lake activities become more difficult. The character and desirability of these lakes change also. Property values are not tied just to wake surfing, but to clean water, safe swimming, quiet enjoyment, fishing, paddling, and family recreation. Protecting those border uses protect the long-term value and health of this community and all the communities in Mason County. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to this legislation being passed. Thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Awesome, awesome.
I see mine.
All right, good morning, good afternoon, heck, we're getting there. Appreciate your time, and I understand this is a very tough ordinance to be looking at. I'm Jim East, I live on Phillips Lake, retired, 29 years active duty Navy, surface warfare qualified officer, experienced driving ships, small boats, followed by 8 years in naval civil service. So 36 years I've served the country, going, looking for a place to call home. And of all the places that I could have picked, I picked Mason County. Why did I pick Mason County? Because there used to be a sign somewhere that said, land of the free, home of the brave. Freedom. Freedom is what we stressed in Mason County. We were not kidnapped county. You know, we are not the People's Republic of Bainbridge. We had some freedoms, okay? And we are throttling toward lawfare palooza. You know, it's just getting crazy. My children come from all over the country to enjoy Phillips Lake. They come here for one thing, to wake surf, because it's low impactful on the body. For an old disabled guy, I can get on a surfboard, but there's no way I can be pulled behind a ski boat or wakeboard. It would kill me. So low impact and something that all ages. I've been able to teach 8-year-olds how to surf. Okay, 11 miles an hour. Yes, it creates wake, but I see lots of wake from lots of other watercraft too. And having been a seagoing guy for 36 years, I'm used to seeing wake. My aircraft carrier made some serious wake as I'm driving it through the Persian Gulf. All right, so wake is here to stay. I don't care what anybody says, all boats make wake. All right, that's a fact. All right. My assessed property value since I moved, I've been in Mason County since 2004. I lived in Belfair. And then in 2017, we moved out to Shelton, into Phillips Lake. And my property value has gone up 300% tax-wise. In Belfair, it only went up about 10% over 12 years of living there. So something's going on here. We're getting taxed at a premium. Anyone who lives on a lake obviously has the money to afford living on a lake. It's part of, you know, you're getting taxed. It's part of it. I tried to fight the property tax increase in 2021. I spoke with the assessor because I thought my property value doubling in price was ridiculous at the time. And they said, nope, pound for pound, lakefront property is more taxable than sound property. All right. So I don't understand the logic in that, but that's kind of what I was told. And I was told, go away, pay your taxes. So I did. Yeah, I think that's not sustainable for a lot of people. You know, if we're going to have to pay this high premium, what are we getting for that? I think I should be able to enjoy the ability to use my wake boat with my grandkids, my kids, and their friends and their significant others. Yeah, we kayak. We do tube pulling. We do all the other things. We used to have jet skis. Have I had to repair my dock in the time I've lived I've actually replaced my dock completely. I've had my dock damaged from wake action. I fixed it so it'll never break again. Okay, I took the time to put the money in building a structure that will face the test of all elements, probably 50, 60 years. All right, it costs money to do that. I put money in the property so that my kids and grandkids could enjoy coming back home. We call Washington home. You know, yeah, I think it gets down to people respecting others by minimizing danger and maximizing safety. I am all about that. You know, every time we go on the lake, we have a safety brief. We talk about what we're going to do. And we try to stay right down the middle of the lake because it's where the best surf action's at, is in the 20-foot area. You know, I agree with some of the other folks that came up and said that. I totally agree. It is about depth, right? And it's about safety. I definitely don't want to damage someone's stuff, because if they came and asked me, I would be willing to look into whether or not I did that damage, and as a responsible person, I would have to deal with that. So I think in our lake, we do try to stay down the center. We spend a lot of money in the sport, and it generates a lot of revenue. It's talked about gas, boat tax, property taxes. I bought my surf boat. I've had 2 surf boats now, and I had a jet surf boat even before that. In the 9 years I've lived here, right, we evolved. All sports evolve. Right now, people are into wake surfing. It's low impact, like I said. I bought this boat, and I pay an annual $300 excise tax. Think about that. Almost $400 for boat tabs. 3 years after purchasing the boat, I'm paying more for a boat than I am for my F-350. Okay? It's insane. We're paying a high premium. What do we get for it? You know, this boat, if this ordinance passed, I don't know why I would want to keep it. You know, it's sad. That huge investment of buying a boat and the taxes that were paid, the sales tax and the excise tax that's taken each year, helps pay for this county. I understand people talking about damage. You know, dock maintenance on ponds, lakes, rivers, the sound. You can't build a dock 30 years ago and expect that you're not going to have to do some maintenance. Everybody's got a responsibility to maintain their property. People say they have damage. They should be showing receipts. They should be showing when the last time they did maintenance on that too, because some things have to be preventive and have to be done over time. They just can't be, oh, I'm gonna wait 10 years and now I'm mad because my dock is broke. You just got to keep a steady strain. So, food for thought. Like I said, all boats create wake. Lakes have a ton of wake action. At the end of the day, we have to respect other boaters and lake users within reason. I think everyone has a responsibility to maintain. I do think if you're considering lots of options, I think you should look at a shared use. Maybe we set times. Maybe wake surfers or people using wake enhanced craft can only do it from 10 to 4. And that allows folks that want to go early morning kayaking. They can do it anytime, but they have safe times in the morning and evening. Same with the fishermen. Same for the crowd that wants to have a cocktail out there and not be sloshed around. Maybe that's something we can look at, or look at something a little bit less restrictive. I do think that a lot of lakes don't enforce the counterclockwise rule. You know, it's standard boating in Mason County. That's what we do. But there are a lot of folks that come here that don't observe that, and they create the dangerous situations. I don't know. I'm all about compromise. I try to see it from both sides. I am definitely against this ordinance, and I highly urge you to look at this issue on lots of different facets. I appreciate every one of you. I know this is a tough job, and I love the fact that I call Mason County my home. So, thank you.
Thank you. Sir.
Hi, I'm Gerard Schaefer. I also live on Phillips Lake. We had a big turnout today. My background, I'm a Naval Academy graduate, so more Navy. I'm also a mechanical engineer, so I'm very fact-based, and I guess we lost our biologist, didn't we? Because I'm going to address something.
So for a civil engineer?
We'll talk later. My first problem with this is the purpose of the proposed ordinance as it's written. To regulate wake enhance operation on lakes within Mason, to protect shoreline property, aquatic habitat, water quality, and public safety while allowing blah, blah, blah. Your goal should be maximize the benefits of public waterways and land to the people of Mason County. The stated goal here is bad. Minimizing damage to the property on the shoreline of the lake, it's a good goal. But it's not the only goal. It's not the only thing that you have to balance as commissioners. And it benefits us as residents of Mason County. The waterways are a public resource. We should be looking what's the best answer? And I guess that's why I mentioned I'm a mechanical engineer. I like the best answer. And this isn't asking for the best answer. This is asking for, give me an answer that does this one thing. And I think so from the very first paragraph, this is flawed. I think, to be fair, I know you're trying to, he did a good job with what he was trying to do, but he's admitted that on a regulation that will impact millions of dollars, that he couldn't pay for stuff behind paywalls. We should be able to give him the budget to pay for proper research. This shouldn't be, from what I could find, this should be, here's the best research, here's why it's the best research. Because again, we're talking about millions and millions of dollars. That brings up some other things to address. Cost of land versus boat. It's been said a couple times. Well, the land costs a lot more than the boat. Did a little quick research. It's nice we can get some things quickly in Mason County. A 300-foot waterfront property on Mason Lake on the point is valued at about $165,000.
Where is that?
I'm saying, but that's what's Mason. No, that's her. It's the Fox property. I looked it up. The land. I'm not talking about MAI level property valuation, but that's what Mason County values and taxes it on.
Phillips Lake.
Phillips Lake.
You said Mason.
Oh, Phillips Lake. Yes, I'm in Mason County. Sorry.
Well, I'll take two.
You can see it's held in the trust if you can talk the trust out of it. It's a great property and will continue to be a great property. And despite her complaining about it, it's a great property. I know for a fact there's wake boats on that lake that are more than $200,000. So everyone who said, oh, the property's worth more than the boats. Boats are property, real property is property. It's just not a good argument that the land is worth more than boats. Somebody also said, let me address safety really quick. It was brought up tangentially. Skiing speeds are about 30 miles an hour, 30 to 38. Slow is 28 for skiing, and surfing is between 10 and 12. Skiing is 3 times faster than surfing. If you want to make things safer, go slower. Look at speed limits. If we're looking at safety for kids, slow all the traffic down, which is going to make it hard for skiers to ski. I've had more encounters negatively with fast-going boats not paying attention than with surfers. I don't want to stay away from the anecdotal stuff. Another fact, somebody said 20 years ago, this didn't exist. We didn't have these boats. My boat's a 2004 Mastercraft X2. That's 22 years old. It's got a full ballast system, makes a wake. That's wake enhanced. Now you can't tell from a distance whether I've got water in my ballast or not. And how much water is full and how much is empty. Does it have to be full? Can it be empty? I don't want to talk about the weird, weak provisions in the way it's written. But anyway, it's been around for a quarter of a century because my boat's based on the X1, which is based on the X-Star, which is based on like 97 Maristar. Boats have been around a while. Nutrients, that's where I wanted to talk about the biology. Because after all the talk about stirring up the nutrients in the bottom, and eutrophication is a problem. It's a problem in our lake. It's a problem everywhere. He mentioned that the root cause is the nutrients getting into the lake. He even listed them. He's like, septic systems, lawns, stuff flowing into the lake is where these things are coming from. You want to help the lakes? Ban lawns on lakes. No, I'm serious, and you know who you are. He's always out there. There's a guy with a really nice green lawn. That would help the lakes tremendously. It's good that we have a good system, including grants to improve septic systems. But if you want to help the biology of the lake, get rid of the lawns. So again, I'm not saying that I want to ban lawns, but I'm saying we should look at this, expand the box. If we want to make the lakes as good as we can for Mason County, for recreation, for income, for economy, for ecology, for everything, we need to not start with, well, how can we minimize wake boats? What we should start with is how can we make the lakes the best they can be for Mason County? So we got to start over, I think. And finally, the water is a public resource. We all have to share it. It brings people to Mason County. Those of us who are fortunate enough to live on it, great. We take some costs because we take the wear and tear. But it was asserted earlier that people can't, asserting their rights cost other people anything. That is not true. When you're driving in traffic, which you have a right to be on the road, and you have to wait in traffic, you get slowed down, you stop, because other people are exercising their rights. That costs you money. It costs wear and tear on your car, costs you fuel, costs you time. We all have to accept that public resources cost disproportionately to some people. Those of us who live on the waterfront pay disproportionately for the damage. Yes, but everybody gets to use it. I think that's good for everybody. So I would just ask that you take a step back and broaden the window. How can we make it as good as possible? Not how can we stop one problem, how can we bandage that? Let's make it good. That's all I ask. Thanks.
I think I have the answer to some of those questions from a civil engineer. Randy, or sorry. This is what I'm talking about today, and that's the letter I referred to. You've probably seen the letter already. Yeah. So my name is Art Whitson. I live at 1591 East Mason Lake Drive East in Greatview, Washington. I'm a recreational boater, and I'm also a surfer. I've been surfing for 40, 50 years on real waves. Anyhow, I'm a registered civil engineer in the state of Washington. And my formal education and work experience includes estuarine ecology and systems engineering. This gentleman that just talked, I think the problem needs to be solved by a systems approach. And I'll get to that in a second. Therefore, I know something about the effects of large waves on shorelines in the environments where these waves do not occur naturally. I'm a Port of Greatview commissioner, and I serve on 2 Mason County advisory committees, Mason County Clean Water District, and on the on-site sewage committee, where I'm committed to protecting human health and the environment. I'm on those committees because water quality is an issue in Mason County, and I want to be a part of trying to solve it. I discussed in this issue in a detailed letter dated May 11, 2026, I submitted via email to the county commission clerk on Port of Greatview letterhead. I wanted to make the point that this is something that we're watching at the port. And Mason and Benson Lakes are in my jurisdiction. I do not need to regurgitate those details. What I want to emphasize in this presentation is the importance of acting to resolve all boating issues countywide, not just the latest issue, which is wake boats. Dumping all the wake boats on Mason Lake and Lake Crescent is not the answer. It is just kicking this latest boater NIMBY can down the road without a complete understanding of the lake, of the county lake natural systems, their changes, and potential property destruction. This Memorial Day weekend was basically the 2026 boating operating day on opening day on Mason County lakes. Lake users come to the county for all over the region to let their hair down and just have fun. This fun is often at the expense. I witnessed from my property on Mason Lake this weekend was jet skis going past my dock at 50 miles per hour within 100 feet of the shoreline. the wrong way, so they were going counter to the normal counterclockwise direction. Wake boats kicking up surf waves within 200 feet of my dock, swamping my dinghy and a small boat full of people 2 docks down trying to fish. So that's the kind of problems we're having. In one instance, the waves came over my deck, which is 2 feet above the water surface at this time of year. My grandkids, 4 and 8, could not enjoy playing in the water because of the wake of the waves this weekend. Fast-moving boats heading north towards the boat launch, greater than 20 knots at 9:45 p.m. in the evening, approximately 200 feet off my dock. That's just totally unsafe. I pay a heck of a lot of money in taxes to have the privilege of owning and sustaining waterfront property that I cannot use during the summer weekends because of the actions of a few inconsiderate boaters on Mason Lake. For the sake of sanity and boater safety, action is needed by the Mason County Commissioners to develop boating rules and regulations that are enforceable, and law enforcement has the means to enforce them. Now, somebody came up with the idea of drones. I think that's an excellent way to monitor Mason Lake, but all the other lakes. In my May 11th letter, I recommended the county establish a short-term advisory committee with a clearly defined scope and timeline that should be done by midsummer 2026. This committee should include stakeholders representing lakefront property owners, recreational boaters, scientists and technical experts, environmental specialists, law enforcement representatives, and local government officials. And thank you very much for your time and consideration regarding my testimony proposed today. Thank you.
Is this another person that has their hand raised, or is that just never lowered their hand? It's the same one. We got it, okay. You're there, go ahead.
Hello, my name's Bill Crabtree. I'm a resident of Island Lake. I live on the other side of the boat launch from the gal that was up here earlier. And yes, we do have a boat launch issue. I do have some documents here that will help, a couple of graphics to answer to go to the question of the staff when they did the research. There is a lot of research on the internet that is available without having to pay for it. A lot of research. I've spent a lot of time researching this issue. But most people have already spoke to all of this stuff. Everything that I had planned on pointing out and bringing up, everybody is kind of throwing it out there from both sides. I want to say I support responsible recreation use of the lakes. Any lake, it doesn't make any difference. But you got to be responsible. And when you look at the type of boats that are being used today on these lakes, there is a law in the state of Washington. I don't know if anybody's aware of this. I'm sure you guys are aware of it. The RCW for the wake damage. I can't remember what the RCW, I had it written down, but I forgot it. But there is an RCW that addresses the damage from boats, from wakes. But problem with that law is it's very hard to enforce. That has to be witnessed by a law enforcement officer, and they have to determine whether that boat really meant to do it. So it becomes a real problem. Island Lake is small. It's a 105 acre lake. It's about 2,000 feet in diameter. All the research that I came across, the distance for the wave to dissipate from a wake boat is 500 feet at 20 feet of water. Island Lake, maximum depth is 29 feet. Most of the lake is 20 or below. We have an island in the middle of it. You got a lake that's 2,000 feet in diameter. That's 1,000 feet from the island to the shore. Any point on the island or on the lake. If you're gonna go with a wake boat, a boat 500 feet, you're right down dead center lane. Most of that is 14, 15, 16 feet of water. Till you get down on the north end of the lake. Then you're getting into a little bit deeper water. So for me, that becomes an issue with that. But the biggest issue that I have, and the thing that has kind of got my dander up more than anything with wake boats, is my grandkids. I've been at Island Lake for 4 years now. My grandkids refuse to go out on the water when the wake boats are out there because of the damage and the danger that they cause. I've seen waves this high, I kid you not, at least 4 feet high. I've taken my pontoon boat over 4 foot high wake from a wake boat on the lake. And the people on the boat laugh. They go out there, they swamp these kids on these on paddle boards. They swamp them on kayaks. They cause more danger. And a lot of these are not adults. There's a lot of adults that go out there and they're very respectful. It's the teenagers. You get a boatload of teenagers out there on a wake boat and they don't care. They will swamp you. They don't stay 150 feet away from anybody. They go right down through them. And then they'll laugh at them. When you say something to them, you're yelled at, you're screamed at. And a lot of these people, you're right, they don't live on Island Lake. They are coming from the public. The public has a right to use that lake. They have a right to use it just like anybody else does. I don't say that I own that lake. But there's got to be a way to stop that kind of behavior and make it safe for other people to use the lake. Isolating it, saying wake boat users got to have a right to use the lake. Yes, you do. I agree. But so do I. And so do my grandkids. And so does the public. And when you disrespect my right to be able to use it because you're trying to enforce your right and you're putting my family in danger, that's when I tend to get a little bit upset. That's why I support this law 100%, or this ordinance 100%, and should be even stronger. I just want to say, I got kind of off track of what I wanted to talk about, and I did not want to get this emotional about it. Wake enhancing activity is just simply not a good fit for Island Lake. I can't speak to the other lakes, but it is not a good fit for Island Lake. Thank you.
Thank you. I think she was next, but then we'll come back to you.
I'm Jan Warrenson. I'm on Mason Lake. Thank you. I feel like I'm a voice I haven't seen up here. My husband's parents bought the property in the 60s. I came to be part of it in 1982. A few years ago, my husband passed away, and I am now the grandmother who's attempting to preserve this space for our future generations. We've had, the lake we signed onto was definitely different boats than are there today. So don't tell me we knew what we were getting into. Our kids love. We have torn up the lake, pulling an inner tube like no tomorrow. I will admit to that. My boat's a 2000. And we bought it a year used from somebody else who bought it with intent to buy a bigger speedboat that did all the things. Ours doesn't even have a rack on it, but our kids have managed to set it up. We can do some wakeboarding, which I want to emphasize different than having a wake boat. There's nothing I like more than watching people out on the lake. I don't even mind the loud music that goes by. When you watch somebody wakeboard and they can do a flip and off they go, it's a fun and exciting thing. But when I have to watch, we can no longer have. Our kids, they could play in the shallow water. Our grandkids can't. unless somebody is really there and can grab them fast. Because when those waves come in, it is terrifying. And the splash that comes up. And this last summer was a bit of a tipping point when I realized, because there's always been some erosion. Yes, there's been boats. Yes, there's been wakes. But I realized that erosion was coming in and was now undercutting. So the land is here, it's been eroded from there, and it's now going in and under into the land that's there. Then I realized my son-in-law parks the boat, and we realized our whole lift had shifted, which is there near where all this erosion has taken place. So earlier this week, I just wrote a check for $700 to have my lift moved to where the boat can now access it again. I just want to say, I'm at the end of Mason Lake near the Simpson Park. That's an area where there's usually some nice flat water. Our skiers used to be, my husband was great. He loved slalom skiing. God, what a sight to see. The flat end of the lake, the early hours to be out. Now it's terrifying. I do need to replace my floating dock, which I don't know how I'm going to pay for, because it is so rough you can't sit in a chair anymore when the wakes go by, because you'll get flipped out of your chair. We all have so much privilege that we have these fancy boats, that we can live on these beautiful lakes, and I hope we can preserve it for all generations and all people. Thank you.
Sir.
Hello, my name is Gregory Gruber. I live on Spencer Lake. Little history for me, I won't bore you with too much. I also was in the Navy. I was a Navy JAG, so I can't say I was a boat driver. So really irrelevant to have mentioned that. I was also a prosecutor for 30 plus years. So I know a little bit about law enforcement and that aspect of this. I see this proposed ordinance as improper government overreach, a term that's already been used before. I feel that in its current state, at least, it's unsupported by studies or research that proves that it's necessary or will accomplish the goals it says it is trying to accomplish. It takes away rights and property without fair or really any compensation. It's legally redundant to existing law in large part and is wholly unnecessary. It's unenforceable, at least without massive tax increases, and it will cause far more problems than it purports to solve. As far as current law, it's currently a misdemeanor in Washington pursuant to RCW 79A.60.170 to operate a boat while towing someone, that is skiing, tubing, wakeboarding, wake surfing, in a manner that is likely to endanger any person or property. The Mason County Code, MCC 9.04.135, is already fully on point as well. Subsection B requires all vessels travel in a counterclockwise pattern. We've already heard today that that doesn't always happen. Unenforced, a simple law like that. Subsection C requires that the vessel and person being towed are 150 feet from the shoreline of fresh water, and that the towing vessel must maintain its distance from the shoreline and reduce speed on returning towards shore to avoid any shoreline wake damage to docks and frontage. So there's already a law in point requiring boats that are towing anything or anyone to stay 150 feet from shore at all times. Unenforced. Unenforceable. You ask the sheriff's office. They don't have the manpower, they don't have the boats, they don't have the hours, the resources to enforce even existing law. If those rules were followed by everybody being responsible, this wake issue would in many ways take care of itself. Because if you're going counterclockwise, which is already required, and you're surfing on the left side of your boat, which most people do, right side is goofy, it's the vast minority of surfers, your wave is gonna, the bigger part of the wave is going to the center of the lake. That much more room to dissipate. If you're already 150 feet offshore to your right as you're going counterclockwise, you have the whole lake to dissipate. Now, I understand that the smaller lakes, some of which we've heard about, this can be a problem, but my guess is that people are not staying 150 feet from shore on those lakes, maybe because they can't, because there's not sufficient surface area, or because the lake is shaped in a way, such as Phillips Lake, the H shape, that it makes it difficult to stay that far from shore. So you could make it 500 feet, it's not gonna change things there. It's about enforceability, and really it's about people being responsible and respectful. Really, the main complaint I've heard from most people is about the yahoos that come in, either whether it's the teenagers driving wake boats that don't care and laugh at swamping people, or the people from outside the county, or just people being irresponsible. If they followed the rules that were there and were simply respectful, we wouldn't even need to be considering these draconian new laws. To the extent that wake boats cause damage, I would remind the council, the commissioners, that all boats produce wakes. And scientific studies have shown, and some people may disagree with this, but studies have said that wake boat wakes dissipate faster than ordinary wakes. Now, they start taller, but they also curl and break more significantly. And a study from way back in 2015 called the Toad Water Sports Wave Energy Study proved that the wave of a ballasted wake boat, which is highest and strongest for several feet immediately behind the boat where you want to surf, then dissipates quickly as the wave curls and breaks. Measurements revealed that within the first 100 feet of travel from the boat's path, wake surfing waves dropped 27 to 56% in height and lost 42 to 82% of their power, all within 100 feet. And that study included much shallower, even than 10 foot deep of water. So if you tried to make a rule, an unenforceable rule that the sheriff has no way of doing anything about, of a 20-foot depth and 250 feet from shore, you're going way beyond what's even necessary, and again, is going to be unenforceable anyway. You're also going to send everyone with a wake boat that follows this draconian law to Mason and Cushman Lakes. I'm sure that those people that live on those lakes haven't agreed to that. Whatever wave action they've complained about already today is going to be multiplied exponentially if you send everybody, not only from Mason County, but all the non-Mason County drop-ins to those two lakes. And where are they going to even be able to put in? To my knowledge, there's only one public boat launch on Mason Lake. It's got a long canal or cruiseway that you have to transit to get to the lake itself. There's going to be a massive logjam. Where are all the trucks and trailers pulling all those wake boats from other lakes or outside the county going to park? It's going to create a massive problem, not even just all the boats on the water having to dodge each other and probably violating the 150-foot rule that currently is in place and would suffice, but there's going to be problems in the parking lots, on the launches. There's not enough ramps to service all these extra boats. Fishermen aren't going to be able to put their boats in. You're going to have a whole new class of people that are coming to you upset that they can't use the lakes that they want to use and have every right to use. Even kayakers, there might be room for them to put their kayaks in at the public launch, but they've got to be able to get their car in there or find a place to park down the road and haul their kayak to the water. It's unworkable. It also means To the extent that enforcement can happen, which it can't, we all know it in reality, he said as much himself as a former deputy. To the extent that it could happen, that means the hours they spend enforcing this in the boat launches, the parking lots, the roads leading to those, and on the lakes themselves, and not just Cushman and Mason, but the other lakes, in case people are violating the rule and using them with a wake boat. That means that those hours spent policing in that way are not spent doing what we really need our deputy sheriffs to do, and that they work so hard to do. Enforcing, my past makes me sensitive to this issue. They need to be patrolling other parts of the county and preventing and solving real crimes that are far more important to everybody in this room and everybody out in the space that the overflow would not allow in here. If the commissioners feel like they absolutely must act and pass some sort of ordinance, I'd ask you to consider doing something far less restrictive. Consider a depth 10 feet, 12 feet. If you have to, maybe 15, but let's maybe start at 10 and see if it helps. If you have to do anything at all. And again, it's not going to be enforceable. 250 feet is farther than necessary. If the 150 feet is followed, that will work. Anything beyond that should be done slowly and incrementally, not 100 feet at a time or higher, as some people have asked for. And maybe for the really smaller lakes, a surface acre area consideration could be had. I don't know what it should be, 75, maybe 100. I don't think you need to go bigger than that. 100 acres is quite a bit. It's more the shape of the water that matters. Thank you.
All right.
Same guy.
The same name's coming back.
No, we have somebody in the back.
Hello, can you hear me? Susie? Susie,
Yes, go ahead.
can I speak?
Yes,
Can you hear me?
yes.
Okay, hi. My name is Carrie Olson. I also live on Lost Lake. My husband just spoke recently. We actually live on the peninsula, and so we see all of the traffic from both directions. We have a small channel between our peninsula and across the lake, which is not very far, maybe 300 feet, maybe a little more. We understand that it's not everybody who's abusing all of this situation, but it's enough to make it so that we are not allowed to use our waterfront. Last year, especially because the guy who was just speaking earlier had mentioned that it was like the turning point. It's been really, really bad. And I personally, myself, have been on the waterfront in a big 8x10 floaty. A wake boat comes past our buoys, which are 150 feet out, and literally nearly put me up on our dock. We have friends who have pontoon boats that have been swamped. Other people's smaller boats have been swamped. So the people who are saying that this isn't happening, it's just not true. The safety is not here at our lake any longer. It's not fair to the property owners that also want to use the lake, to not be able to use their property. Not to mention, again, that the lake is deteriorating. Last year, again, another wake boat came by 150 feet out, and we have it on video and we have sent it in to the commissioners of the churn of the water that has came up past our dock, and it looks like somebody took a mixer and just ground up all the water. That's crazy. That was 150 feet out feet out that that boat caused that action. Again, there are some people who take the responsibility and try to do the right thing, but you know what? It's the ones who aren't that are causing all of these problems, and it's making it unsafe. We are okay with the Sea-Doo people who are flying through at 80 miles an hour. We'll suffer that. The skiers, the other wakeboarders who are using normal boats, of course, there is a wake. There's going to be a wake. But when you can't be on your dock because the activity is so extreme, it's not okay, and it's not fair. If you speak to any of the surf boat people, I can assure you that most of them will say, well, we're not going out right now because guess what? There's another surf boat out there and their wake is too large and it interferes with our wake. And that is true. So we're not asking for all of the recreation to take to be removed. We're just asking for a little safety for the other people who live on the lake, and for the responsibility of the commissioners to understand that yes, we all pay taxes here. We all deserve the same rights. If you bought a $250,000 boat, you should have thought harder about the small lake that you're trying to put it onto. It's very selfish, and it just seems, I just don't understand. Not alone, or not even talking about the eco value of our lake. Everybody knows who lives here on this lake that we don't have the same fish. We don't have the beavers, everything here is changed. Everything has changed. So that's what we're asking for, is some sort of regulation to make it fair for everyone and to save the lakes for the future generations that everyone is complaining about that there's not going to be more of, because it's not going to happen. If the wake that's coming from these boats comes up to our bulkhead, which again, they have to stay 150 feet out, and is coming up to our bulkhead and jumping up 6 feet in the air, that's not okay. And it's not right. The erosion is immense. Our dock is in a mess. Everybody's dock around here is a mess. And it's not okay. So the people who own these boats should look harder into their souls and understand that this is not personal. This is about the future. Thank you.
Hey.
Jeff Farrington, Island Lake. Again, we moved to Mason County about 20 years ago. The first purchase was a house on Island Lake. The second purchase was a boat from Verls, local business person. And again, I'm opposed to this ordinance because I basically see it. Everybody has said all the good things and all the bad things, but I see it as the start of a no having fun ordinance. It's just, people have said they don't like jet skis. They don't like these boats. They don't like speed boats. Towing the kids on a tube creates a wake. We live on the windward side of the lake. Often the waves are as big as the speedboats going by. Again, thank you for your time. I know it's going to be a hard decision.
Anybody else?
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Janet Harmon, and I live on Lost Lake. I want to start by thanking you for giving us a chance as the community to speak on a topic that pretty much affects everyone personally. It is a very personal topic, either side. My husband bought the land and built our house 20 years ago, knowing that the lake we live on, Lost Lake, offered every sport, was what you could do. If he knew that the future, we could not use our boat, he would never bought it Lost Lake. He would have bought it Mason Lake. But we didn't. I I have lived on Lost Lake for 13 years and brought my 2 children. I had never done any water sports. I didn't know what it even meant. My children learned to surf. I learned to surf. Our house, it sits on 190 feet, low bank, waterfront, right in front. We have no damage to our dock. We have no damage, erosion from any surf boat. From wind, yes. We have whitecaps on our lake, and it does deteriorate. Our first surf boat that we used is a 1997 Mastercraft. So any boat can be a surf boat. I watched people surfing behind a pontoon. I have a picture. So, here's the deal. We loved it. Fell in love with it. It wasn't if you crash, you're not going to get hurt. And as we get older, I have to accept I can't wake board anymore. My knees won't take it. Tubing, there is no way my body's getting on a tube. So we purchased a new boat in 2016, a Surf Supreme, because we surf. My family enjoys and loves the lake. We do use it for swimming, big time fishing, and surfing. We do also have Sea-Doos, which all of our stuff is parked on the dock. No damage to any of our equipment. This is why we live on one of the very few sports lakes. The current proposed ordinance would greatly affect our property values and my quality of family time. My kids have no interest in riding around on a pontoon boat. They want to surf. They want to do physical activities. It isn't fair to ban me and my family from doing activities we enjoy because a minority group do not like it. I believe we can find a happy medium. Not a complete ban on surfing or surf boats. Some suggestions I have is a distance from shore, which a lot of people have thrown out. Throwing the wake to the middle of the lake so it has time to dissipate. But the big one is making sure all boat operators have a Washington State boat license. Know the rules of a lake. Teenagers taking out a big surf boat, you're right. They are laughing. They're doing things they shouldn't do. But if you, as a responsible boater, no matter what boat you have, you need to know the rules of a lake and respect your neighbors. By doing some of these things that should protect, we have 2 sides of Lost Lake. They are big enough with the bans or the requests that are in the ordinance that both of those would be the 200 or 250 feet and the depth. It does meet that. My concern is starting to ban activities. Is it going to work to start banning others in the future? We don't know what our kids or our grandkids are going to want to do on a lake. They might look at wake surfing and say, oh, that's nothing. You got to see what we do now. Are we going to be in here saying, oh, no, I don't want your grandkids to do it because I don't have grandkids that are doing it. So let's consider a compromise. There's got to be something that all of us can enjoy the lake. Surfing, kayaking, fishing. Our son fishes all the time. So again, I don't want to be in your shoes either. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I'm Stephanie Brooks. I'm on Spencer Lake. And just listening, it's interesting how it seems to be a concentration of certain places that, and I'm not positive about that seem to be seeing the damage, which could have to do, you hear about the great surf spots in Hawaii, you're here or there, and what's the bottom of the lake is what's creating, or the ocean in that case, is creating these waves that are a certain shape that do a certain thing. So something to consider. I don't have an opinion on that or suggestion on that, but I think there's more to it maybe than just the depth and the width. At Spencer Lake, there's a natural outlet that regulates the level. However, the state in the 50s built a berm and a concrete barrier that controls the flow of the lake out, because they killed everything in the lake. They poisoned it with rotenone, took all the fish and frogs, everything went, and they stocked it with trout. And then they didn't maintain that barrier over all the years. As a matter of fact, they don't even claim that they did it. And well, it's a long story, but the lake level has come up significantly. So when we have winter storms, we have big erosion on the shoreline if you're in the right place where the wind is hitting you and all these waves with the whitecaps hit. In the summer, the lake can drop roughly 2 feet. And then now you have gravel beaches that weren't there. The beavers control the drainage quite a bit, and people go in and remove the dam from this narrow outlet in order to allow for the lake to drain. But the damage that comes from erosion, in my experience, is coming in the winter storms that go on for days with wind, waves, and high water. The high water isn't happening on Spencer Lake when people are surfing. The high water is in the winter. A couple other ideas or thoughts for you that you'd want to consider. Mason Lake, as has been mentioned, has milfoil, the Eurasian milfoil, not the native one. Boats carry that from lake to lake. So now if people in the county who can no longer surf or wakeboard on their lakes go over to Mason Lake, now they're bringing that boat back to their lake. That is a Class B noxious weed that requires, by the county, requires control. So, and a fragment of that can start the growth of the Eurasian milfoil. One other thing, the biologist who was here, a few thoughts on his comments. We had an algae bloom on Spencer Lake. Gosh, it was probably in the low teens, 2000 something, never before. My husband, his family has lived on this lake for 75 years. When they started there, they drank the lake water. It was that clean. It was pumped up to a water tower and fed to the house with gravity. There were a few houses on the lake at that point. That's it. Of course, that's not the way it is anymore. We don't drink the water. But that algae bloom really scared a lot of people, so I actually called the Department of Ecology, and the woman in charge of that came out and we toured her around the lake. This algae bloom was in November. And she commented, because there's no agriculture with like cattle or something that would be washing in there, it's the septic tanks, the high water, and just the other thing is that the lake, I've done a lot of reading on this, is overstocked for the size of the lake, the amount of trout they're putting in there. It's loaded with fish poop in the sediment. And all of that contributes to algae growth. It isn't just the boats stirring up what's there. I have not seen one wake surf, wakeboard boat out yet this year. But on the weekend when it's sunny, yeah, you go out on the dock, the water is completely cloudy. It does not matter what kind of boat is out there stirring up the sediment. It gets stirred up with just normal boats, with pontoon boats, with a ski boat. You look in the water and it looks muddy. And so wakeboard boats aren't the only ones that are stirring something up. So I would encourage you to consider that some of these things that seem to be directed toward putting blame solely on wakeboard, wake surf boats I think it's there's broader considerations about what is actually causing sediment to stir up, food for algae, things like that. I mean, I had other things to say, but I think they've been covered by everyone else. So that's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Afternoon, probably now, commissioners. I also feel that it's very pointed towards wake boats, and I have my suspicions because I and my family have personally been chased down while surfing with our children, grandchildren, and on more than one occasion. And we live on Phillips Lake, and so this feels like a really big bullying. We're gonna get those wake surfer boats, and now we gotta defend ourselves or something. But I understand all these other things that have been brought up, and I do encourage more studies. I don't want our lakes to be lost to the future, to any ecological reasons, but also I don't want to see people bullied out of things just because certain people don't like that sport. So not just teenagers can be jerks. Old men can chase you down with their boat and scare your kids too. Thank you.
Your name? Your name?
Oh, it's just the East.
Kurt Harmon from Lost Lake. And I just wanted to touch on a few issues. One of them is the claim of all the erosion of these boats. And Lost Lake is still got a lot of timber on it. And we went around the lake to kind of measure things and realized there's about 200 trees tipped in the lake that have, I've been on there for 21 years. I've never seen one of them go in. So my guess is they've been in there for 100 years. And obviously this is natural erosion that was happening long before any of this. All of a sudden it seems like wake boats are causing everything. And the studies are kind of leaning the direction they want. So that's a big part of it. And our water quality, which they claim our natural fish is wiped out and all this stuff. Well, my son caught over 20 bass there this last weekend, which is the best he's ever done. The trout fishing's good. We've already seen several salamanders, so our water quality is good. And we're really hoping this can just resolve and work for everybody, I think. And I guess that's about all I've got. Thanks.
All right. My name is Warren Zeideluk. I've lived at Mason Lake for 18 plus years now. I've seen a lot of things come and go. The advancements in our technology and the designs of these vessels are compounding and getting worse, creating the damage. I don't think it's specifically just one boat. I've never been to Lost Lake. I've never been out on those boats or on those lakes. So I don't know the per capita, you would say, of how many people are out on the recreating at a time. But I've recreated every summer on Mason Lake, and it's getting worse and worse and worse. And one wakeboard boat isn't going to be a problem. 5 wakeboard boats aren't going to be a problem. But when you've got 15, 20, I mean, I counted 60 boats on the lift this past weekend, just going around the lake now that are all wakeboard boats that live on Mason Lake. And now if you're going to shut all small lakes down and just put them to Cushman and Mason Lake, you're going to make Mason Lake to not be able to be recreated anymore because we're going to be overloaded by boats. And it's going to be impossible. Nobody's going to have any enjoyment. And a boat that weighs 8,000 pounds, that's weighted down with more water and 15 people, and they're going 12 knots, and you've got them in a line. One person goes down. Now, these other boats have to redirect to go around them. You can't just go down the middle of the lake and call it good. That's not the answer. I don't know what the answer is, but just directing everybody to our lakes, Mason and Cushman, that is not the answer. There's got to be a different compromise. So I'm against this banning of the wakeboard boats.
Griffin Myers, Phillips Lake. We purchased our home 3 years ago. We love the lake. We love the community at the lake. We care about the quality of the lake. I'm not going to go through all the stuff. I think everybody's pretty much gone through every point of debate on this. I can tell personally from the Myers family, it's our second home. We chose that because it is a full rec lake. I think that was mentioned earlier as well. My kids want to come out and surf. We have a surf boat. I mean, they enjoy it. Their friends come out. My family comes in from New York every year. We do that. So, so for us personally, we've got choices to make if this passes. We bring a lot of money to Mason County. We pay our taxes. We register the boat here, all that type of stuff. I don't think that should be overlooked. The point that I'll touch on too, that I think have been touched on, but I believe in as well, this is an infringement on the freedom to use your property. I do believe that. And then two, the enforceability of this, I just don't see how that's even possible. And it's going to cause more friction between neighbors on the lake. And we have a great community there. We love it there. We want to preserve that and enhance that. So thanks.